That's all right.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with Pledge Allegiance. The flag is right around the corner. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. It's glad to finally be back in person after a 2-year hiatus. We have a pretty long set of agenda items this evening. Maybe we can just start with the approval of the February minutes. Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the February 24th.
What's that?
Yep, February 24th, Board of Education special meeting.
Have a second?
Second.
Any comments or corrections or concerns? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion passes, minutes approved. Next item is public comment. We basically ask members of the public who would like to comment. Each member of the public has 5 minutes. When you come up, please state your name and the road that you live on. So we'll start public comment now.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Gorey. I live on Good evening. My name is Michelle Gorey. I live on Georgetown Road. I'm a resident in Weston for 20 years. 13 years as a volunteer impacting safety on Georgetown Road. I have a master's degree from Columbia University in speech and language pathology with autism and learning disability cognitive health. I have questions for the BOE and MIW. We have just found $10 million to spend on child education in Weston. What are collectively the top 10 academic must-haves for them to be intellectually stimulated, to academically thrive, to be artistically enriched, and to feel safe and supported with academic resources, educational curriculum, and support personnel? The students deserve a premium educational experience in a safe school. I'm passionate about quality education that Weston's children receive. Our 2022 report card indicates a 78% reading and 74% math proficiency, which relates to WPS academic outcomes have declined from the lows of last year. In both math and reading, all 2nd through 8th graders are below the academic performance target set by BOE and central office. This is building trust and skepticism in the town's ability to focus on appropriate investment priorities and opportunities, causing some mothers to pull their kids from WPS to private school. Also, our schools are not safe, ranking number 31. What's going on that we need to prioritize immediately, and why is this not being addressed? 2 independent consulting reviews costing the town $135,000 and $200,000 respectively. The recommendation for the capital budget expense includes, admittedly, yes, we need school repairs, facility maintenance, and renovation. Fix it already. But we didn't need to spend $335,000 for that information. FOIA records demonstrate that what was recommended was useless, ridiculous, and slanted. The can methodology and maintenance schedule and oft-times mentioned, where needed repairs have been well known for years and ignored as egregious. This is leading to severe problems and delays whose oversight reflects incompetence of fiduciary responsibility. The delays only increase and compound costs. But we don't need new buildings and a tab of $150 million. Why are you not recommending that one of the schools, like the middle school, be eliminated as well as the annex? Stop wasting money on renovations of these 2 buildings. The footprint reductions are doable given current and reducing enrollment trends, in fiscal prudence and resourcefulness. Yes, some things are outdated and need to be replaced. Boilers, air conditioning, lighting, special equipment. repurpose where possible, innovate where feasible, and optimize facilities and operations where necessary, but reduce redundancy and waste. A quick look at waste and redundancy produced a record-breaking $15 million in wasted expenditures from 2018 to 2021. The last time we had a huge capital expenditure was 20 years ago, which miscalculated to the tune of $20 million more needed over the $80 million that we voted on. And yet we still have this last $100 million project on the books. The last 2 years, the immediate focus is to invest in academic curricula and resources. Why is this not a priority? This extravagant expenditure at the risk of brick and mortar over below performance remediation should make one want to immediately rethink the investment focus for the student body. What do parents want for their kids? Operating expenses. What various parents surveyed say their children need? Technology and engineering, because to increase budgets in robotics, software, coding opportunities. There's no funding for intellectual kids. They need science labs. They need a variety of enrichment programs that inspire performing arts, practice rooms, graphic design, gaming, orchestra, school supplies. Why did the PTO have to raise funds for a needed printer? They need tools to thrive in regular classroom setting. They need lockers. Teachers need to be able to plan and teach their children. So support staff is very important to address the social needs, not limited to special ed and learning disabilities, but also gifted children. And conduct issues, where there's violence and bullying and disruptions in the class, etiquette and worse. So you need to be actively involved with the students that they serve with the state-of-the-art best practices they specialize.
Okay. I'm gonna need this. Just a point of order before I begin this, I was told that you're not allowed to cede time to another person. There was an inference that it is in the bylaws. I would like to see that tomorrow if possible. You and I can talk tomorrow. All right, they serve with my name is Jim Maggio, High Noon Road, Weston, Connecticut. They serve with this SLA, best practices specialized in and work with students with the best interest at heart. The kids are without full-time psychologists who have lost many staff and paraprofessionals. Reduce excess, redundancy, and wasteful spending and administrative costs, which is causing more harm to the kids. Third, superintendent resignation. Kids need to feel safe and supported to be who they are and encourage their gifts. They are not feeling safe, ranked number 31 in safety. No bus monitors, not enough aides at recess for 60 kids. They need to have fun, like a teacher who inspired the Colonial Day reenactment, a creative way to teach, which for the small budget it was, had been turned down. And they need after-school programs, the ones that are available, close out quickly, which means there are not enough. They need in-school individualized help because the students are struggling to meet the academic goals, especially in math scores. Those who cannot afford private tutors need the district to work with these families to keep on target with BOE requirements. Richfield Academy is one highly regarded school, and we'll just go with RA. Sorry, I didn't read the notes. Not WPS. They create an environment where the children love school. There's sheer excitement at the school, the best offering in academic excellence and extracurriculars, a joyous, caring learning environment where every child is respected, heard, and encouraged, and has a lack of bureaucracy. Conclusion. We look to our Board of Education and find the right balance to create a budget for the academic needs of our Western students and fiscal restraint. We are heading towards skyrocketing numbers in our current economic environment. Please consider that students have endured enough stress. They don't want or need increased stress of construction work at a certain level of frequencies that disrupt and cause distractions to learning. These white noise frequency disruptions to children on the spectrum will be unbearable. CVMS mandates adapting to changes in virtual Zoom learning, hybrid learning, quarantining, educational interventions. But even a greater concern is the FBI and federal grand jury probe at the state capital of Connecticut school construction project. The state of Connecticut will not dole out funds for unnecessary construction projects and expansions, so if audited and found to be excessive capital expenditure reimbursement, Weston would be devastated by a scandal of this nature, not to mention have funds recalled. Having effective leadership requires collaboration and creative thinking to ensure that our resources are invested in the classrooms. Moreover, that tax dollars are used effectively. The BOE role is a critical one in determining policy to improve the education of all Weston school children. Let education be paramount to fund new initiatives versus unnecessary brick and mortar. Listen to the stats. We need improvements to take our education system and support systems to a higher level for the children to thrive. Last word, it says here, you'll be happy to hear. In the words of one of the most brilliant 9-year-old non-speaking autistic members of our Western community, to paraphrase, supremacy reigns unless we fight diligently to educate, when rights of governance takes precedence over their constituents' right for transparency or engages in suppression. Our great shame is evident, and we must not consider ourselves a modern progressive town of excellence. Supremacy, is that it? Okay, that's it. So anyway, having lived through 20 years ago when the last referendum happened, there was no promise that educational outcomes, academic outcomes, nor could there be a promise that they were going to advance. And I would say that as you're now presenting your side of the story to the Facilities Optimization Committee and the STEAM group, that you consider that the parents might want to hear about that aspect of how you're going to spend their money. There's only so much money in this little town, but we want to think that we're going to become some sort of junior Westport or New Canaan. It's a great town with great people, and it gets overshadowed when people are not being told what they need to be told. And when the PTO makes representations that the upcoming data that you're going to be looking at tonight is good news, I would question if you actually did a deep analysis into it and looked at all the numbers, if you could agree that that's great news. You need to tell people what they need to know and then let them decide. Am I done?
50 seconds.
50 seconds.
50 seconds.
No song and dance. Listen, I lived through this before. Lisa, known you for years. My daughter did great here. I will tell you that back then, they told us we could teach your kids in a tent. Instead, they spent $80 million on putting lipstick on a pig. And all the money that was spent on bricks was not available for books. There was a year here, Lisa knows about this, the first year that Tom Screech was here, I went to him. I had a toy that my child had made as a sophomore in high school, a toy that I thought was made as some junior Boy Scout thing with a train that would have wheels made of buttons with a straw as an axle. And this is what they got that year for technical education. That same week, I saw an article in the Daily News about kids at Stuyvesant who were working on a bionic ear. Bionic ear? Choo-choo train. What does that mean to you? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Jennifer Haythorne, Winthrop Hill. Weston is a good school system, but it's not great when considering the dollar amount spent per pupil. Did you know that Weston spends the most dollars per pupil in the state of Connecticut? Would you be interested to know that neighboring towns not only spend less per pupil than Weston, but those towns achieve higher academic outcomes on standardized test scores? We are equal to Trumbull, Monroe, and Guilford, not so much the Westport, New Canaan, Darien that you might like to think you are. Want to hear some disturbing news? Weston's academic outcomes are and have been declining for years. Years long before any of us ever heard of COVID-19. Don't let them say that to you, because that is a common myth. It has been going on for years and it can be proven. This is factual information, and if you don't believe me, you can ask Weston PS Curriculum Leader, Assistant Superintendent Croft, right over there when you walk by. I assure you, he will confirm this sad truth as it is finally no longer a secret. But more disturbing is that many of our leaders here tonight and sitting right before you all knew and know this upsetting data point, and sadly have failed each year to change the way we educate our students to overcome this travesty that is upon us to such depths that it cannot be corrected anytime soon without radical reform, starting with an outside curriculum specialist to inform the antiquated and complacent thinkers here in Weston's leadership. Not only does the way we educate our students need to change, but our leadership as well. I ask respectfully and publicly for board members Anthony Pesco and Melissa Walker to please resign immediately on behalf of the future of Weston students, staff, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, guys. Greg Haythorne, 6 Winthrop Hill. Tonight, the BOE will review WPS academic outcomes which document that, through no fault of their own or that of their parents, countless WPS students are likely to fall irreversibly behind their full academic potential while students at WPS. Because these declines are documented to have started long before COVID, academic catch-up will not be feasible for many of them. But worse, because these declines were known to BOE leadership and former central office administrators, but not clearly revealed publicly prior to COVID, parents of these students were denied the necessary opportunity to engage with the district and the educators in a way that might have addressed the shortfalls and outcomes you will be discussing this evening. That's unacceptable. Incumbent BOE leadership has been in charge of WPS budget and operating policies for 4 years now. Instead of transparently raising awareness of declining WPS academic trends and focusing on urgent reforms and investments, the BOE chair has permitted himself and told board leadership to be distracted by the Facility Optimization Committee, STEAM, and their Tecton consultants on a third school $200,000 building study. Instead of focusing curriculum, BOE leadership has now wasted 4 years. First as chair of the Facility Study Advisory Committee for the now discredited Silver and Petroselli studies, and more recently on the Tecton study to develop recommendations for $60 to $130 million of renovations and expansions of the 4 school facilities. Educationally unnecessary expansions and renovations when one of those 4 buildings is privately acknowledged by FOC members to be extra and documented to be so by historical WPS enrollment data to be entirely unnecessary educationally. What we cannot understand is how the FOC on which the BOE chair serves could have ignored the obvious conflict of interest, but asked anyway for the central office administrators to present them on January 4th the only estimate of savings from outright closure of the extra school building. The conflict of interest for the administrators is so obvious as to throw into doubt the reliability of years of Facility Optimization Committee, STEAM, and Tecton work. Due to this conflict of interest, it's no surprise that the central office, apparently with the direct involvement of the Board of Finance Chair, Ron Baldwin, estimated net school closure savings of only $750,000, a preposterously low sum when educational costs associated with the 4th building are documented to be close to $10 million annually. 10 months ago, when falling academic results for the first time were publicly revealed during the May BOF meeting, we called for the resignation of BOE leadership. In the year since, your own records tonight will document that academic outcomes have only fallen farther, despite Weston being again the top spending district per pupil in the state. There must be accountability if there is to be hope of sustained improvement for every WPS student, not just improvement for those students with the resources to supplement deficiencies in WPS education with outside tutoring and college admission preparation, but for all WPS students. Therefore, we call this evening for a change in BOE leadership. As superintendent, Lisa Wallach has demonstrated the transparency and willingness to adapt, which will be necessary to reverse academic declines, but she will be unable to do so until BOE Chair Pesco and Vice Chair Walker are held accountable for the avoidable academic declines. Not all districts suffer the types of academic declines you are going to be discussing this evening. This is a Weston problem. Therefore, we call this evening for a change in BOE leadership and the immediate resignations of Chair Pesco and Walker. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I didn't have a planned statement, but my name is Christine Harris, 26 September Lane. I just wanted to let you know I've had a few texts from viewers at home who are unable to access the live link there. Quite a few people texting. Just, I thought I would make it known, so take any action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We want to pause until they can.
Yeah, Dan?
Yep, I'm on it.
Dan, do we want to pause until it's live or accessible, or it's up to you, Tony?
It's up to you. I'm gonna run in the back and take a look and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'd rather not go on and make sure that everyone can access the meeting, but,
On the other,
well,
on the YouTube.
if there's,
Tony, can we do the public comments again?
no,
It is being recorded.
Yes.
yeah, it is being recorded.
Do you have new nameplates in case anybody has to leave tonight?
What's that?
You have new nameplates in case anybody's going to resign tonight?
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it, but, yeah. Let's just take a second and see if there's a quick fix here. We also have this little device here that's recording as well.
With higher quality sound.
What's that?
With higher quality
Yeah.
sound.
By the way, is there more public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just hold it off for a second.
Yeah.
That's why it should be now.
Is that confirmed, Jody?
I'm seeing it on the live stream here, I'm just gonna wait till it comes back.
You're seeing it now?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Let's just give it a second. Just have Dan confirm that we're back on.
I'm gonna show you track oil and sap for time, but I'll do that. Is it not in person, is it? She said it's fine. Let's have the meeting there. Why the heck won't you join the meeting? And her like umbrella drink pink shirts, you know? Like that's exactly. Hey, Boomer, I use a GPS for everything. I saw Jay the other day at school. She was so cool. And you know that before COVID, just during the COVID station, or they have overgrown top. So now they're you know, I saw it to me, it's ugly to see some of the clothes and then, but she's standing at the counter. You know, and I did a double.
She's 5'10", I guess. I'm sure.
You gotta go to here to be. I want you people talking about what is this? Yeah, 4 days, big red. But they are.
Yeah, they're all
It's scary, it's like going down the
They
road.
should come out the other end okay.
They come back.
Yeah, they do.
When? I'm sorry. I say that all the time. Literally, I walk into Federer's restaurant. This is all I do.
Hey, Jody, were you on?
No.
I can
What?
see somebody
It was?
screaming, but I'm not hearing the
He
sound.
said that he doesn't have an ETA on the So it's going to be recorded, it will be on YouTube.
Ask,
Ask the form of recording is
yeah,
confirmed.
find out if it's going to be recorded. Okay.
Yeah, they keep one foot in, and then one foot. And then it was like full transfer from you to her. It's like kind of all the values are all gone. Like, now you're just like,
You okay with it?
How they step through me. Yeah, sorry, I'm not pressing you in.
It will be recorded. Just say it'll be recorded. We're blasting out that.
Okay, the meeting's being recorded, but there's something happening with the streaming, but it's being recorded, so let's just continue. So, more public comment?
Hello, everyone. I'm Travis Worrell, 44 Birch Hill Road. I'd like to thank the first person, and I thank everyone for being here and all the hard work that you put in, but definitely want to thank Lisa Wolack. I think she's definitely been doing a great job as the new superintendent and might not get recognized enough for that. Later this week, the BOE will be presented with recommendations and options by the Facility Optimization Committee's consultants. After close to $200,000 contract and close to 3 years, the FOC's team leadership will reveal to you the recommended options for building renovation and expansion at a minimum cost of $60 million up to a maximum of $130 million, while recommending against closing the extra board school building. With both enrollment and academic declines now publicly revealed, as a parent of 3 WPS students, I fail to understand how the school building plan is going to serve the best educational interests of either the WPS students or the Weston taxpayers. Nowhere in the community conversation presentation materials were the academic benefits documented, nor were any analysis included that would justify the presented options or recommendations. And more alarmingly, the impact of 5 to 10% inflation does not appear to be considered anywhere in the BOE's fiscal 2023 budget. It's a multi-year budget, or in the development of TechTime's recommendations or options. What is all going on, and what is ultimately going to cost my family and our neighbors anyway? My recommendation is to immediately halt any further FOC work and instead focus on what matters educationally. Sorely needed curriculum and educational resource improvements, as well as improvements to district operating performance. Perhaps the best place to start will be to quickly produce all the FOIA records and the work of the FOC and the central office intervention strategies. With access to the requested information records, Weston parents will be eager to help solve what to date has eluded the current elected representatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Okay, thank you. The board appreciates all the comments. We have 3 themes really tonight that we heard, right? One is about academic outcomes, which we take seriously and we're going to be discussing tonight. There's 2 other themes that came out from the public comment. One is around the work of the Facility Optimization Committee. And I think that from my perspective, and I think the board's perspective, there's a long road before anything is decided. And at the end of the day, the citizens ultimately, which will have the vote to decide what happens. The board will have a recommendation, the Facilities Optimization Committee will have a recommendation, but it's really the citizens who ultimately will vote on this. That's kind of the way it's going to happen, and it's not going to happen soon. There's a lot of work still to be done by the board. There's a lot of work still to be done by the town before I think that we have a coherent plan that involves both school and town facilities. So this is the first step, and you'll be involved in every step of the way. These are public meetings. You'll get to hear all of the recommendations and the rationales for each of the recommendations, and ultimately, you, along with every other citizen of this town, will have a vote. The third is the budget. We're probably 2/3 into the budget process. There's more meetings. The Board of Finance has the budget now, and they're deliberating on that budget. There's probably another month to go. There's more public meetings. And again, you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on those. And ultimately, as citizens, you'll have the opportunity to vote on the budget as well. Typically, the Board of Ed doesn't comment on public comment. It is just that, public comment. We listen, we'll take that, internalize it, and hopefully during the course of the meeting tonight, when we go through the agenda items, some of those themes that you mentioned today will certainly come up in the Q&A that the board has. So thank you. Thanks for the public comment. Now we'll go to our student reps.
Hey, so we have a really exciting week at the high school. We have Spirit Week happening. We sort of decided that we're going to start setting the foundations of some new traditions up at the high school, especially after COVID. There was definitely a slump within our leadership at the school, like within our students, just trying to figure out ways to get the students back involved into these like long-standing traditions that they've really never heard of. And one of the things we decided was that we should sort of take initiative and create our own, and sort of redefine what spirit looks like at the high school. So we decided that March would be a good month, sort of in the lull between the holidays and everything, to host the Spirit Week. So we have a lot of exciting dress ups. Today was Pajama Day, and I've done a lot of Pajama Day Mondays, and I can say that this is definitely one of the best I've ever seen at the high school. I saw a lot of creative outfits, and there's a lot of excitement. We also have Jersey Day tomorrow. We also have students even request to like wear their Powder Puff jerseys tomorrow, which just goes to show that they're really excited about what they've already done this year and want to like go back on that. And we have a lot of exciting dresses to come. There's just a vibrancy and a liveliness that I think we really missed at the high school, and it's really starting to come back. And I think students are sort of taking initiative and getting involved again.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything she said. I definitely see a lot of, liveliness within the student body, and not only just the student body, the teachers and everyone as well. I feel like the past couple of weeks, especially, have been just really exciting, especially for the rest of the year. And tomorrow, actually, as part of the Spirit Week, student government has worked with Full Court Peace, an organization that builds, that works on and builds basketball courts. I believe in Cuba, and in different places or locally. And there's going to be a 3v3 basketball tournament tomorrow. That goes along with the theme of March Madness and all the basketball going on now. And we have a lot of participants already. The sign-ups are still going on. I believe we have over 10 so far, 10 teams, which is great. And it's also open to spectators, and that will also be raising money for their project later this year. And we also have a bake sale that will be taking place at the same time. So hopefully those things will be able to raise a lot of money for their project later this year, which will be very fun.
One of my favorite traditions at the high school that we managed to keep going all 4 years that I've been at high school, even despite COVID, is Deck the Halls. It traditionally takes place in the fall, but we had a feeling that pushing it off would be the best bet, and I think it really was. Deck the Halls, if you don't know, is when each grade has a theme. There's an overarching theme, and then each grade sort of takes their own nuance on that, and they get to decorate the T, which is the main hallway at the high school, and it's really a really powerful display of what the students can do. It's all student led. They design it, they decorate it, they invite a panel of other students who are not a part of the student government to sort of get involved. It's a really creative project. I know this year the seniors are even working with Art Honor Society. National Honor Society has also reached out and is helping us. So it's pulled together a lot of students. It's really united us, and I won't give away too much of the themes because it is exciting for students to sort of come in on Thursday and see what their peers have worked so hard to put out. But we are doing a theme of movie franchises, and each grade has sort of taken their own spin on that. It's a really collaborative, really engaging project that's really rewarding, and I think it makes the school brighten up, it makes the students excited, and it's one of my favorite traditions, something that I think we'll definitely keep doing for years. So it's been really great to bring that back. So Wednesday night we'll be decorating with a bunch of teachers and volunteers who are supporting us on that.
Yeah, and one other initiative that we just recently started today, a couple of students came up to student government as well as administration to work on something relating to relief in Ukraine. So we are working with an organization, I believe, out of New Jersey, that will be able to bring relief items to Ukraine that we get through a drive at our school. So we're collecting things like blankets and other necessities, toiletries, first aid. So that is just something that I feel like is definitely a great initiative that we've recently started. And yeah, I think I'm really happy to see that all the students are coming forward to have an effort in community service and things like this. So yeah.
Another project that I mentioned at the beginning of the year that I personally am really passionate about is the Little Free Libraries project. So we sort of harness the sophomores who are very excited, our sophomore student government, who will sort of take this on as a legacy for their next 2 years and then hopefully pass that down. They're going to work in collaboration with a few seniors who started this initiative, along with the English department at the high school, to hopefully do a book drive and to have little free libraries that are built and taken care of and maintained by students at each of the schools. And they're hoping to, along that path, work with the younger students and sort of engage the high school all the way down to the elementary school and really link the students. And I think that's a really impressive initiative that was taken on at the high school. And then we are just really excited for the rest of the Spirit Week to see what students have coming up. We also have a lot of exciting projects towards the end of the year. I know seniors are really feeling like they've gotten back to normalcy and are also sort of leaving their own footprint at the high school as well as the community in general. So I think it's just a really powerful energy that's going on at the high school.
Yeah, and along with that, I remember, I know we mentioned last time that that each grade group for student government has been working on their projects for community service. So we've had Kansas Bottle last week. I know each grade has some events that are planned in this coming month and the months to come. So, you know, we've seen a lot of community involvement this year. You know, I definitely think that this year, compared to last year and compared to the year before, we've seen an incredible amount of involvement and just energy from the students, which is fantastic to see, you know, and yeah, we just want to continue that going forward. So.
Great, thank you. You know, the first time you came to us in September, you talked about the fact that your initiative this year was going to revolve around service initiatives, and it's nice to see you following through with that. It's great, even in a year that wasn't quite normal, you managed to follow through with all of those service-related initiatives. Congratulations.
Just a quick question. Thanks, you guys. The Ukraine collection that you're doing, is that just for high school students? Is it across the whole district? And can it be made available or known to all of the Weston residents? Because I think everyone's looking for a way to help. And if we can, you know, get every Weston resident on board, you've really created a movement. So I'm just wondering how we can share it with the rest of Weston.
We definitely will move that down towards the entire, like the rest of the schools and the entire community. We hope that this isn't just something that lasts for Spirit Week. This is something that as a community we can build together. We have actually a junior who sort of took this initiative, who's definitely looking to spread that throughout the community. And if anyone is looking to get involved right now, tomorrow night at the basketball fundraiser for Beaufort for Peace, we'll also be accepting donations for anyone who comes to watch. So it will be accessible, and we hope to move that down as soon as possible.
Yeah. Great, and if you need to, you know, reach out to other sort of stakeholders in the community, the faith communities, for example, you know, they can say the high school is collecting X, Y, and Z, and they can make it move for you out in the community as well.
Yeah. So I mean, like we said, we just started this today. So I'm definitely we are definitely, you know, towards going, like making it bigger. So I mean, it's definitely a great initiative, and you know, I would love to sort of compound that as much as possible. So yeah, we'll definitely do that going forward.
Thank you. As always, you're free to stay or go.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again. All right, up next, we have some new hires and resignations.
Yes. Can I be heard? That's okay. Sorry, I'm not used to it. Yes, thank you, Dr. Pesco. We have the following consent agenda. We have, as far as new hires, we have a new school psychologist at Hvac Elementary School, effective on March 29th, 2022. Lauren Uffett, I'm sure I mispronounced her name, will be joining the Hvac community, replacing Ms. Colombo, who had resigned earlier this year. We also have a resignation of a para-educator, Brandon Guzman, who works currently at the middle school, and he will be leaving us at the end of March as well. We wish him well because he's going to be undergoing an internship that is required for Brandon's degree. And lastly, we do have an announced retirement. Our beloved Latin teacher, Laura Guadagnoli, one of two Latin teachers we have at Weston High School, will be retiring at the end of the school year after working at Weston High School for 5 years. You become a grandmother and you want to stay like that. So we will certainly miss Laura and actively looking for her replacement.
Can we have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the items on the consent agenda as recommended.
Second? Thanks, Bernie. All in favor? All right, all opposed? Okay, motion passes, and we welcome new members of the Weston community, and we wish the resignations and the retirees the best of luck in their future endeavors. Let's move to the next item on the agenda,
The next item is
graduation date.
graduation date. It's very exciting. We now actually can set the graduation date before April 1st. And I know that the high school and members of the senior class and their families have been eagerly awaiting this date. Graduation will be held on June 21st. It is scheduled last day of school, a Tuesday. If we do have another cancellation, we still want to have it on June 21st. There's a lot of arrangements and things that have to be made. I see Ms. Gavoni shaking her head. So that is the date that we proposed.
Do we do need a vote on that. I don't see a motion language though.
I didn't think we needed a vote, I thought it was just a discussion.
What's that?
I didn't think we needed a vote, it was just a discussion.
Yeah, I think we do need to vote on graduation date. Yeah.
Want me to wing it?
Yeah.
Then wing it.
Wing it.
Move that the class of 2022 graduation date be Tuesday, the 21st, June 21st, 2022.
Second?
A second.
Thank Bernie. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. The graduation date. Next item of the agenda, date change for the April meeting.
The April board meeting is currently scheduled on the 18th, and I believe that there is a necessity to move that to the 19th. No. Was it?
Yeah, no, it's the 18th was the first day back after break.
That's
Right, and there was schedule conflict, so I think that there's a move to move that one day forward to the 19th. That's okay with everyone. Okay. Have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education move the April 2022 regular board meeting date to April 2022.
A second? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion passes. The April meeting will be the 19th. I assume it's 7 p.m., right? Same time. Next item of the agenda, discussion regarding preschool.
Yes, thank you. This is the time of year where we open up to the public that wish to participate in our preschool, and I'm happy to report that we have a wait list. So that has led us to consider opening up another section of preschool to accommodate the wait list. And I would ask the Director of Pupil Services, Tracy Edwards, just please, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So many of you know that we have an early learning center program for preschoolers ages 3 and 4. That program is designed for our special education students, and we accept general education peer models in that program. We have families submit applications in December, and we complete what we call a lottery process in January. And this is the first time since I've been here, I know that this is only year 2, where we actually have more students, more general education students than we can accommodate in our existing structure, which is 1 freeze classroom and 2 force classrooms. And interestingly, perhaps, the students on the wait list are largely concentrated within that force program. We had a number of students on the wait list. I brought this idea to the finance committee this past Friday to talk about the possible addition of one more force class in our program. And I also sent out a communication this morning to the families that are on the wait list for that program to see if they had found another program for their child to attend or if they're still interested. It looks like we have, at this point, 8 students who are interested in the program, and we don't have a place for them. By accepting these 8 students, remember that each classroom is composed of both general education students and special education students. I anticipate we could take all of the students on the wait list and also better distribute our special education students in each of those 4 classrooms so that we can have a higher ratio of general education peer models compared to special education peers than we would have if we didn't open up additional space. I think there are a lot of benefits to introducing Weston students to Hvac sooner rather than later. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight.
Yeah.
I think this is great news. I think it is a pipeline into Hvac, and that's really good to hear those numbers. I also love the idea of distributing the special needs kids throughout another section, so I think that's fabulous. Are there any downsides?
There's a cost, which is why we're bringing it to this one.
Yeah.
Programmatically, no.
I mean, is it a tuition? They're all tuition-based enrollments?
The general education peer models are tuition-based.
Right, and special ed are not.
Yeah, I guess the issue, obviously, opening up preschool to more students is actually a good thing. Then the question, the person on your left is, the tuition, right? Let's go through the numbers, right?
Right.
So it basically 8 students tuition. What does that cover? Because we do need a teacher and we need a parent. Right?
Correct. So based on our current model, the current cost for general ed is $7,000.
Right.
So that will be about $56,000. Assuming that everything works out as planned as usual.
Right.
$56,000. That will partially cover the cost for a paraprofessional and some of the health insurance for that para. So all in addition to shortfall that we would need to cover, that will be just over $100,000.
Right. And is the thought now, I think we talked about it in finance, the thought now to make it budget neutral?
Correct. I mean, based on the assumptions that we have and the adjustments and mitigations that we have for the FY22-23 budget, we do believe that we will be able to incorporate this and have it be somewhat not affect an increase in the budget for next year.
Are we going to go through that in
How do you do that? Oh.
We will. It wasn't included in the packet that we sent out, but we'll talk about the broad numbers overall.
Okay. Because I think that's really the issue. There's 2 issues. One is it a good thing to do? Obviously, it's a good thing to do. The second issue is how do we actually work that into the budget next year?
Correct. Right. So we will discuss that when we get to that agenda item further on. We'll just talk about it in broad stroke. But it will not result. Ultimately, it will not result in an increase to the budget for next year.
I have a couple of questions. Tracy, there's 1 section of 3s and 2 sections of 4s?
Currently, yes.
and you're proposing a third section of forest.
Correct.
How many, in the two section of forest, how many students are, my son went through ELC, so I can't say enough good things about it, but I'm not sure what is the criteria or how many of those students would be enrolled into ELC through a need rather than general.
Yeah, so let me address two things that you just said. The first is, you asked me about 3s and 4s classrooms. There is, just to be clear, it's not a perfect exact science. There are some occasions where we have an older 3-year-old, for example, in a 4s class. For the most part, the classrooms are organized by age. Your second question was about the number of identified students in the 4s projected for next year. Just give me one second.
And the guidelines for those.
So our classrooms in general typically have about 12 students. And in terms of ratio of special education students to general education students, we're really not designed to exceed 50% special education, 50% general education peers.
You said there are 12 students generally per?
That's total special education and general education.
So 6 fed and 6 general.
Correct. And now, based on our current numbers, we have 13 identified students right now in what are slated to be our 4s classrooms for next year. Though if, I mean, I don't know how much in the weeds you want to get, but if we were to open up an additional class, it's possible that some of the identified special education students projected to be in the 3s class would move into the 4s, because we are definitely seeing an increase in birth to 3 referrals, which is consistent with area districts. And the challenging piece of planning for the 3s classroom is students initiate services on or before their 3rd birthday. So we have students coming into that program throughout the school year. It's not that on the first day of school, all of the students are in that classroom. So we like to reduce the number of identified special education students in that room, knowing that we're going to get referrals that in this moment we couldn't possibly project for next school year.
Okay, so, and then at the K level, I think the board recommendation is 18 students per class.
Guidelines.
The guidelines?
18 to 20.
18 to 20. So what would the downside be to simply increasing the two sections of 4s to 18 students and still split 50-50? But it sounds like that would cover the potential incoming identified needs.
So I would say that there's a pretty significant difference between a preschool student and a kindergarten student in terms of level of independence and need for support with basic routines throughout the school day. I have never had a preschool with 18 students. I would have concerns about that number of students. Have we pushed the 12? Certainly. I think 18 is high for a preschool classroom.
And so if you have identified students in these classrooms and the needs of the identified students that are going up, is there also a possibility that you're going to need more paras because the students coming into the program have more needs?
Paras within preschool?
Yes.
So I'm not anticipating additional para-educators needed for these classrooms, with the exception of, if we're talking about an additional 4th class, we're talking about a teacher and a para.
Okay. And then, Phil, when we get to the numbers later, operating expenses going to be included? Because I know we mentioned, or Tracy mentioned, the cost to hire a para and how that could be offset by the $7,000 tuition, but are there additional operating expenses to operate a 3rd section?
Yeah, there probably will be minimal costs for supplies, but outside of supplies, there's a lot of operating costs that will be incurred with adding one additional section or one additional classroom.
And the last question is, and this might just be lack of knowledge, does the district receive funds from the state to offset the cost of the identified children who have the special needs.
So we've received what's called the IDEA grant, and there's two sections of that grant. One is called the 611 and the other is called the 619. One of those grant allocations is for preschool, but it is a much smaller amount than the allocation for K-12. The exact number.
And is that a guaranteed grant, or that grant is year to year?
That, I mean, there can be fluctuation in the number, but that is a grant that is consistent that I don't anticipate we wouldn't receive for any reason.
And is there an obligation if we were to add that third section to maintain that third section in perpetuity, or could you roll back to 2, whether it's because of enrollment or because of financial?
I think, like any other grade level configuration, it's really based on the number of students. We were not having this conversation 2 months ago because we didn't know we had this level of demand. We could have more demand next year, we could have less, but it would be based on our numbers. We would do an analysis based on the lottery and people who have expressed interest in the program. And to be fair, I'm continuing to monitor this. Like I said, I sent out another communication just this morning to families who are on the wait list. And as they get back to me about plans for their children, that will obviously be relevant to next steps here.
This is not an item we need to vote on. But I think we need to consider what the financial aspects are going to look like when we get to that part of the agenda. Next agenda item, discussion regarding the director of school council.
Thank you. Yes, I also wanted to engage you in a discussion regarding the possibility of creating a position of the director of school counseling, 612. We explored this actually within the administrative team when I was principal of the high school, and ultimately it was not moved forward in the budget process. This was several years ago. And I think that we need to consider again for the 2023 school year in response to the increased social, emotional, and academic needs of our students, especially at the secondary level. So what does this position do? How does it differ? Basically, it would be a split position where it would be 60% administration, 40% counselor. And the person would coordinate the SRBI program, scientific research-based interventions, which are some of the things that we are going to be talking about later tonight, as well as evaluating the school counselors 612 and really looking to make sure that there is a strong vertical articulation and a robust developmental school counseling program 612. Currently, we have the director of counseling at the high school is 912, and the middle school piece is there's a grade level counselor at each level. This would give as I said, a particular focus at scale to ensure that the continuum 612 was appropriate, at scale delivered, both in the developmental guidance lessons that they did with the scientific research-based interventions in math, in reading, and also in the area of social emotional. The person would, if you're looking at the document, coordinate all the testing. The person actually does that now, coordinates the testing. The other thing is that the person would serve as the district-wide 504 coordinator. Right now, 504s are pretty much managed at the building level, at the 4 buildings, and at the they're overseen by the whether it be a counselor or at the elementary school social worker and the administrators, the building administrators. So our plan is to have this person sort of do an oversight K-12, which is common in our other Burg A, if you will, districts. And again, I think that it will help, make sure that everything is being, that our kids are being taken care of. and that everything is being done in a systematic way at scale K-12. We've had more and more increased needs in this area, as you know, that we've talked about. So we see this as something that would definitely help in that area. Now, I'm very conscious of the, the fiscal responsibility. And so this also involves, and Bill can elaborate, and so can Tracy, a reallocation. For example, right now, we have a director of school counseling that gets paid a per diem rate in the summer, a certain amount of days. That would no longer, it would be reallocated to a piece of the salary. The other thing is that there is a school counselor reverse stipend that is given that would again be allocated to cover the cost, and that's how we would work it. It's not a significant increase by any means, but I do think that the reallocation strengthens that program. We are really proud of our school counseling program and what we are trying to accomplish K-12 in social services, but focusing particularly on the needs at the secondary level, and to make sure that it is well articulated, especially as our children move up to become young adolescents at the middle school and then transition to high school, would be important. This person would also serve as the main coordinator for those transition years. You know, the middle school is right in the middle. 5, 6, 8, 9, those are big transitions. And to be able to have someone sort of pull all of that together would benefit the students. Tracy, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add, or perhaps we can see if there are any questions, or Phil, as far as the finances.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. So how is this, maybe you can step back a little bit.
Sure.
How is this different than what we're doing now?
Okay. So what we're doing now is we have someone that works 9/12
Right.
and oversees our school counseling department. At the middle school, it's pretty much by grade level, and the 3 counselors work together. There's no, I would say, structured coordination 6/12. I mean, they've done the best they can, I guess I would say. But when you really look at integrating things like Naviance, things like the personal goal setting, things like that program at the high school, they use it much more than at the middle school. This could raise the level of its use at the middle school that I think would be beneficial to the children, with someone that has an oversight across the board. What if you have a director of school counseling 6/12, when you have a student assistance team meeting, for example, which is the step prior to special ed 504, where you're concerned and you have meetings with that. This person could help coordinate and sit at the meeting. It's really important that the process is done with fidelity. And right now, for example, the principal of the school evaluates the counselors, correct?
Or assistant principal.
Or the assistant principal evaluates the counselors. That is how it's been done. I would say to you, having sat in that seat and working on evaluating also the academic component, the academic teachers, it would be very helpful with someone that at the level of as a director of school counseling that has specific degrees in those areas to be evaluating those counselors, and it raises the level, to be blunt, of accountability 6/12 with this department, and that's, I think, what we need. The 504 piece, every building does a little bit differently. And of course, they're different ages. However, I would say that we need someone that is a point person to oversee that process. It's too important not to. And especially as it goes up, this person will be looking at it K-12 and supporting our director of PPS. And I guess the big thing is when we looked at this pre-COVID, I thought, this would really be a great use of the talents we have within the department. We're very proud of the fact that we have a certified college and career center counselor. Not everyone has that in the state. Not everyone has that in the DERG. And to be able to have, to have that structure, it would be, I think, a seamless transition because of that support person as well as the counselors. So.
Is there any way in which, I mean, I'm all in favor of this new position and the expertise that this person would bring. And I'm assuming that he or she would report to Tracy, right, under your sort of supervision, is that right? Is there anything redundant about your role and the new counselor's role, or director of counseling role? And that's not a loaded question, it's more like, does it allow you more freedom to do your work? Because I know you are just inundated.
So this position allows us to focus on the work differently than we have the capacity to do now. As Lisa said, there is a significant amount of mental health support needed, particularly in grades 6 through 12. This allows us to take a deeper dive into that work. Yes, I oversee the 504 process in my role. The special education component of my role is also significant. This allows us to put more focus on that process than I think we've been able to over the last year and a half. So I don't think it's duplicating effort. I think it's enhancing effort in areas where maybe we haven't been able to allocate as much time and attention previously. And I also think, it opens up opportunities from the supervision and evaluation piece to developing professional development plans that are more appropriately targeted for those staff members, to thinking about how we can be providing early intervention supports differently than we're doing now. So I don't think it's duplicating, but there will be a lot of coordination with this role and also the PBS administrators.
Great, thank you.
Phil, how is this gonna work?
So similar to, as Lisa mentioned, there is a small difference between what the current salary is and all the various pluses and minuses. We're looking at a difference of like $4,100. So it's really not significant in the grand scheme of things.
Similar to Taffy's question, how would the creation of this role change the roles of the 9 through 12 counselor and the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade counselors? What would this new role allow them to do that they're not currently being able to get to, or how would they use their time?
So this would require 2 shifts, both at the middle school and the high school level. The first, I think, most obvious shift happens at the high school level, in that the person in this role would not be performing typical counseling duties at that point. This would shift more into an oversight role for each of those grade levels and providing direct support to the counselors. So this person would be a resource for the high school team in terms of promoting consistency in process and procedure in a variety of areas. I think they're all outlined here. I think the middle school will experience a more significant difference because right now there isn't a unifying force, and I'm not minimizing the collaboration that happens between those 3 individuals, but there's no one directly providing guidance and oversight around the work that's kind of outlined in this document. So it is a shift in terms of roles and responsibilities. Again, the idea being if we can make 6-12 more cohesive, and if we can make our transition process, and I'm thinking about transition broadly, transition within WPS and then beyond, I think we maximize our ability to engage and meet the needs of our students.
If I can add, the counselors were part of this discussion as well, specifically at the high school, not so much the middle school, and they were excited about the potential of this person. we've seen a lot of complicated cases, I guess I would say, the last couple of years. It's been very challenging, and to be able to have someone that you can go to, run it by, make sure that we're doing the best for our kids. That's critical. I mean, that is so important. It's another stopgap to make sure that someone doesn't fall through the cracks. When we look at coordinating the SRBI, the interventions, see what is going on. We can't afford to have anybody fall through the cracks. It's just too critical. And that's why we thought that the timing was finally right for this position. The counselors will do what they always do, and we have amazing counselors. It will give them, though, that breathing space and also that ability to really have much more of a cohesive team, 6-12, and have that point person to be able to go to when there's question, when we're not sure, to be able to handle it in the best possible way for our kids.
I have a couple of questions. First, just because it was new to me, can you just tell me what DIRG and DIRG A are? Because it took me a little while to learn as a new board member. We all
Sure.
know this today.
So DIRG A is, it's a grouping that the state uses. And so DIRG A is Darien, it's Barlow, it's New Canaan, it's Richfield, it's Fulton, it's Staples, it's Weston. That's DIRG A, District Reference Group. District Reference Group.
So sort of our peers.
So, yeah, our peers. So when we look at things and we say, how are we doing? We often compare ourselves to our peer, suburban districts. And when you look at them, for example, Darien has a 12-month admin in this position. We don't need 12 months. We're not as big as Darien. And we, with the 11 months, the person, as the current director, was working almost that amount of time because of the extra days when we were paying the per diem rate. You look at, for example, Staples High School has a similar setup, and that person is an admin. Okay, Richfield does not have an admin component to theirs. So we look to see, and often that we look to see all the time what are different districts doing and how we can maximize our investment.
Okay. What's our current ratio of students to counselors as in middle school and high school?
So currently, I have it right here. I knew you'd ask. Currently, it's approximately, so we have 5 counselors counting the director of school counseling, who has a reduced load. And this person would also still have counselees. It would be a reduced load. So right now it's 180. And our director caseload is 100.
Is it both the middle school and high school?
Well, the middle school is based on grade level, correct, Dan?
Yes.
So it's about.
It depends on the grade. It could be like 1 to every 185, 1 to 205, 205 grade.
And the high school, 1 to roughly?
We have 180. And it should be noted at the high school, the way that they're divided up is family. We like families to stay together to work with the same counselor. And the other thing, what's important about that is it's mixed grade levels, because the counselor writes a letter to college, and you can't have, a disproportionate amount of seniors, because we really pride ourselves on our letters, to make sure that they're the best letters. So it's a mixed grade level, configuration, and that's 180.
Okay, and so 4,100, that's fully loaded?
Fully loaded, yeah.
Does anything change as far as staffing goes with union? Like, is this position categorized different than the positions that they'd be absorbing?
Correct.
Yes.
And I have spoken to both bargaining units, because it's a split.
The 40, the admin?
60-40 split, which has been done in the past. Actually, it was done with me many years ago. When I first came into administration, it was a split. Because I don't believe that we need full-time, full admin position. No.
Any other questions, concerns? No? Okay. Yeah, no, again, this doesn't require a board vote. Bill, you're up. Financial update.
So for the period ending October, and it's February, we continue to trend on a favorable basis. We're currently, our projected balance to the end of the fiscal year is $268,000. The main difference month over month has to do with health insurance. We have seen a significant change in our current census level. We discussed this significantly quite a bit in our finance committee meeting. So on average, we do average about 330,000 or so contracted life, so to speak. For this year, I'm a little bit surprised at where our current census is. We're at about a 314 or so, and we have several different shifts. So that's really a lot of the main drivers for this month. For the month-to-month change. We have slight other small changes, but really health insurance is the main driver for this month. So that's on the operating side. As it relates to our dental claims, we are trending as we anticipate. So we're pretty much on par to where we plan to be for this time of the year.
Yeah, so Bill, right now we're anticipating having almost a $270,000 surplus. Right.
Correct.
So, last 2 years, the year before last, we had around $900,000 surplus that went to the town's unallocated reserve.
That is correct.
Last year, we had $1 million surplus that went again to the town's unallocated reserve. Right? This year, we have surplus again. The question really is going to be, and this is discussion with the Board of Finance, is this is money that the taxpayers has already been taxed for. How do we actually use some of the surplus to actually ease the budget burden for next year, right?
Correct.
And so, I think that some of the things that we need to talk about are really for the Board of Finance discussion, but I guess this leads to the second part of your discussion, which is how do we look at these surpluses now, and what are some of the things that we can do to ease the budget burden for next year? And obviously, this is a discussion with the Board of Finance.
Right, and similar to what we have been doing, I guess the past 2 years or so, we've always tried to use surpluses to mitigate the upcoming budget, and this year's is no different, and we're definitely recommending that we do that. But before we get to the mitigating piece, I just want to talk about some adjustments that we have.
Right.
The first part of the adjustment has to do with health insurance. So again, the budget process is it's a long process, right? From the administrative level, we start our process typically in October or so until we finally get to the Board of Education our deliberation in January. And then as Tony mentioned, we are pretty much two-thirds of the way through. So from that time, there can be a lot of shifts, whether it be ups or downs, because you get a lot of new information, and we also have a lot of pending information as well. This year is really no different from that. So what we have for this year, and again, it's also the gift of time, and it also gives me more time to review my formulas and everything else that I have. What we found for this year for health insurance is that we do have some changes. I did have a formula error, which I did correct. In addition to that, we will have some changes to the census as it relates to retirees. So the combined trend for all that is going to be roughly a reduction of $204,000 to the anticipated request for next year. In addition to that, of course, once you have those ups and downs, you'll also have a decrease to the employee and the retiree cost share portion, roughly $25,000 reduction. We did get some early indication from our broker, from our overall health, and from our overall life insurance, liability, auto, and property insurance, an increase of roughly $31,000. So from an adjustment perspective, we do anticipate that a reduction of 148,000 or 0.27 reduction. Now, as it relates to the mitigant portion of our budget, the mitigation last year, we did ship or we did pre-buy textbooks. For this year as well, for the FY 22-23 budget, we are also recommended that we use the surplus from this year, approximately $83,000 to pre-purchase the textbooks as well. In addition to that, we are also making a recommendation to have the discussion with the Board of Finance, that the Board of Finance reestablish a non-lapsing account to pay for non-recurring expenditure being our EREP. For fiscal 22-23 will be the final year for our most recent EREP. So we want to use the surplus to pay this non-recurring expenditure. So again, combine those two items for the books and for the textbooks, it's approximately a 0.37 reduction. So all in, we're looking at a $371,000 reduction or 0.67, which will bring our requested increase to 2.79%. Now, to go back to our early conversation as it relates to the preschool and for the director of school counseling, that will be an add of $140,000. So combined, when you take that in, we'll be at a 2.97% increase year over year.
That's versus what we approved, which is 3.46.
That is correct.
So let me play that back a little bit. So we have a budget adjustment that is related to health insurance of about $148,000. You're going to pre-purchase some books this year at a cost of $83,000. So that's done, right? So that's approximately $230,000.
Right.
Then we need to have a discussion with the Board of Finance if they will approve forming a non-lapsing account to take some of the surplus and use it to pay our early retirement liability for next year.
That is correct. So we do have some experiences in that in our current year, we did use surplus funds to pay non-recurring expenditure. So this is similar to what we did for this current fiscal year. We're proposing that they do the same thing. Again, this will be a discussion with the Board of Finance, and ultimately the decision will be with the Board of Finance.
Okay. Questions?
So there's two components.
Okay.
That's the operating component. So I just want to pause on the operating component first. So if there are any questions. All right.
Are you going to get to the capital?
Capital.
Okay. Yeah, because I had a question about the duct cleaning.
Yep.
Okay.
So this one is it's a few pieces to this as well. So you know, as Lisa has mentioned several times, we do take our responsibility of being fiscally responsible very seriously, and we do our best to ensure that we're using taxpayer dollars in the best way that we can. So for this year, you know, our FY22 budget, we did have a contingency for the middle school to set aside for HVAC repairs. As you guys know, we have not had any significant repairs to the middle school, and a lot of the HVAC that we have, they're really original to the building. Yes, we have done repairs, but we have some money, you know, because we're a little bit concerned whether we would have any catastrophic failure. We wanted to be sure that we would have some money set aside for that. So from our current year, we have $25,000 that's in our budget, that's been approved. We have a new request for next year, which will pretty much replace all of our heating pumps, so to speak, which will control both our heating and cooling to the tune of $65,000. We're proposing to make a request to the Board of Finance, so the Board of Finance use the $25,000 from this year and only fund us for next year, $40,000. So that will reduce the request for next year by $25,000. Second piece. Also for this year, we did have an approval from the Board of Finance, a $380,000 capital expenditure to replace handlers at the old gym at the high school. Now, when we went out with the engineer, the initial cost that we had from our engineer was roughly about $380,000. When we did the RFP, the cost was in the tune of $600,000. So we kind of paused.
Sorry.
600,000.
Okay.
So we paused a little bit, and it kind of just have us take a look at to see if we could do anything differently. So for this year, Mike Del Mastro, our director of facilities, reached out to one of our contractors just to evaluate our system and to see what could be done. So based on that evaluation, we determined that of the 4 units, 2 of our units we have done some repair to them. There's a total of 4 units that's there. We would replace all of our units for approximately, replace as new. This will pretty much be new motors, bearings, etc. As Mike would like to get into all the various details of that. And that will be $90,000. That will leave us with approximately $290,000. The proposal that we have is that we make a request to the Board of Finance to take $265,000 off that to pay for the proposed duct cleaning that we have for next year. Now, this would probably be an exception to what the Board of Finance would typically do, because we had a discussion at the last meeting, and the Board of Finance, they have specific criteria as to what would make up a capital expenditure. So we would need to make a request that they waive those criteria, so to speak.
So what you're basically saying is in the capital budget, there's money left over that you want to use for the proposed duct cleaning of the 3 schools.
That is correct.
Right. Now, but we went to the Board of Finance and they said that's not a capital item, that's an operating item.
Right.
Right, so 2 things are gonna happen. Either where that's just gonna be a surplus and then we'll run $265,000 or so through the operating budget, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do.
Correct.
Or we'll use that money to do the duct cleaning for 1 year, but then in future years, we'll have to run that through the operating budget.
Right. So again, what we're looking for this year, we're really looking for a reset, right? And again, we were definitely cognizant that this cost probably wouldn't be more in line with what it to be an operating cost. But to kind of sort of so that we're not artificially increasing our budget for 1 given year, we decided to just make a request for capital. Now, the plan is that once we have a reset for future years, this will be a part of our operating budget where we will plan for these kind of cleaning, so to speak, and be proactively doing this. So that would be the main difference. Now, again, so there are different ways to do this. The Board of Finance can say to us that this should be a part of our operating budget, and if that's the case, then it is. But again, we just have to keep in mind that this is just going to artificially increase our budget, and we'll have those discussions with the Board of Finance. So we're thinking that again, this is a good use of money that's already been approved. So we're hoping that the Board of Finance will support this.
Yeah, I think that first of all, any questions or comments, but I have a proposal for a way forward here.
One more component. I'm just get through all of the capital items.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, so there's more. So also from the 290, there's a capital item there for to do and to create a double door at the west, $25,000. Also, we're hoping to take that from the 290. We're also, based on discussion that we've had with both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, to defer Haven for another year. That's $550,000. We have a small item to replace some sinks at the middle school for $19,000 approximately. We're proposing that we will do that from our current FY22 operating budget. So all in, all of these proposals will reduce the capital budget by $883,000 or $884 to bring the new request to $783,000.
So,
forgive me, but can someone explain to me why replacing a sink is $19,000?
Several sinks. So it's these are special sinks, and I guess all the work and plumbing that has to be involved. So it's not just a matter of just taking the sink out and dumping it out. So it's a replacement of the sink and all the plumbing and everything that goes along with that.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that what we need to do is probably just outline the ins and outs very clearly and send it over to the Board of Finance so that we can have this discussion.
Sure.
I think a lot of these things are really going to are really going to have to be with their agreement.
That is
So,
correct.
Yeah, so let's just, I think let's just create a ledger, the ins and outs, what exactly we're want to take out and what we're going to replace it with, and total it up, send it over to them, and hopefully, it would have to be in the next month, have a discussion with them.
Correct.
And the big piece is the waiver that you're looking for, right?
Really, yeah, because we've had several discussion about our duct fleet and everything else. So I do believe that 265 would be the waiver that we would be requesting.
So one quick clarification question.
Yeah.
So I might be reading this incorrectly, but it looks like a savings, but it's not. You're looking to spend less this year, but these things that you're deferring are not going to do this year. They're just going to come back and be needed next year.
So a lot of the items though, we do have several items though we have deferred on our capital budget, and we do bring them back. And again, there's a lot of good that's going on in the town currently, right? So we do work in a collaborative manner with the town. So the town has said to us, hey, we will have some pavement going on both for this year and for next year. We will do an RFP, and we'll just incorporate the full parking lots and all the various pavement that has to be done, both on the town side, on the BOE side. So we said, fine, we're working in a collaborative manner, let's do that. So yes, it will come back. Probably we're hoping that the cost of these items will be less because it will be a larger project. So definitely will come back. It probably will not be at the 550 level. Just for full disclosure, the 550 number does include several contingency. So we would assume that the numbers will fall roughly about half of what this is.
Okay, but just ultimately we're basically saying we're going to skip some things this year.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to do this year costs less than what we asked for.
Correct.
But these things are going to come back next year. It's not that they're going away. It's not really a savings. It's just what we want to do this fiscal year versus next fiscal year. And the paving thing, I think, is a big one. Why it's even on the BOE, I don't know. But ultimately, the community pays the taxes, whether it's paid for by the town or by the Board of Ed. So it's going to get paid for each way.
Yeah, and the one thing about the capital budget that's different than the operating budget is the capital budget is looked at in conjunction with all the town capital needs, and the Board of Finance has a line-by-line readout on those items as well.
Can I just ask a technical question? Do we, if we, can have crystal ball and look in the future and know that in 2 years or 3 years, our air handlers are going to be needing to be replaced, we would get an RFP before the budget is approved, right?
Correct.
So, for example, we got the RFP, it was a couple $100,000 more than the budget was approved for. Wouldn't we get that RFP before budget season?
Yeah,
if we could see 2 years in advance, right?
Right. So, for a lot of these items, if we go back just to for the whole gym, this one was a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, we would definitely want to get an RFP, of course, with a full disclosure within this RFP that is suspended funding. So going forward, we will. So if you take, for example, our duct cleaning, we have issued an RFP because a lot of the numbers that we have are technically soft numbers, and because of the dollar amount, and also based on our purchasing policy, we did issue an RFP, and we did a walkthrough a few weeks ago, and we're hoping that we'll have at least 5 vendors who will bid on this project, and we will have that coming in on the 21st of this month. So we'll have some solid numbers to that. But in an ideal world, in terms of planning and how we should do things, that is definitely the way that we should have been done, really. And that's where we definitely plan to do this going forward. So a little more technical with this, right? Because I think the timing for this was a little bit off of last year, and we did work with the town building committee just for planning purposes and everything else. So the town buildings committee was intimately involved with this project.
Good, thank you.
We do need, there's no more questions on the finance. We do need a motion on the February financial update.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the February 2022 financial update.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Financial update goes into the record. Okay. Let's move to district goals.
Thank you, Dr. Pesco. We wanted to, we started talking about this last month, and I think that it certainly warrants some more discussion because we can go through everything. And so I wanted to take the opportunity this evening to continue that discussion and that sharing out. At the very beginning of the school year, we created a district goal document that is posted on our district website. And what you have in front of you and what was posted, and Mr. DeVito, maybe you can just, no one will be able to see it, but at least you can show it because the print is so small. So people can know, if you go to the district website and you look at the district website under district and under goals, you will see the original document and the one that has been posted in board book and will be posted tomorrow by my ever faithful assistant over there, Ms. Saketa, will post the winter update. I think it's really important that, you know, that the community knows the different targets that we've set, the different goals that we have. And to me, the most important thing is the steps in the action plan and what progress we are making to that. If you can't get it, it's okay, you can talk through it.
It's warming up.
It's warming up, okay. I'm just gonna continue. There. So I do encourage you to look at the document online, because also on the document online there, each school has its own action plan that this school documented, and that's also on that same page. And I think there's a lot of information there. I mean, quite frankly, this is the core of our work. This is what we're doing. Oh, hooray, there it is. Thank you. So this column here is what's been added, and you can see it tomorrow. And I know it's very difficult to see, but I wanted you to at least see what the document looks like so you're able to reference it off the website. So we had some specific goals in math and reading this summer when we looked and analyzed the math and the reading results. You know, clearly we have work that has to be done in those areas. And we are working towards it, and I'm going to have Dr. Cross speak specifically to the math and the reading. You know, last month I talked a lot about a growth mindset, and this past summer we set targets. And it reminded me of the days many years ago when we used to do the CAPS testing at the high school, and we decided to set, you know, we set targets, and we wanted a certain percentage of our students to reach those targets. And frankly, it took us a couple of years to get there, and we got there. And it was very exciting, and I think that that's the case here with this. When you focus around something very specific, when you ask the teachers, the through line into the classroom, to create goals and have evidence indicators of the results of student progress, when you get behind it and provide them support and structures to succeed, then you know, I am confident that over time our academic you know, performance will improve. And the most important thing is you know, last month we spent a lot of time talking about growth, and that is what we want to see, is growth. So this specifically is math and then reading, which Dr. Cross has a separate presentation on. I would like to highlight a couple of other things. Keep going. Keep going. And the next one is portrait of a graduate. And those of you that have been regular followers of our meetings know that Ms. Gavoni has spoken about the portrait of a graduate. The portrait of a graduate is that K-12 journey, and specifically to ensure that the class that graduates has all the requisite skills to be successful, to be able to thrive beyond Weston. And we had some very specific things that we wanted to accomplish. Some of this also had to do with the graduation requirements of the state. So we worked on aligning the policy with your help.
We have put things in to support this process in the 2023 budget. There's a electronic portfolio that's being created, and we're really excited about this work and what our students can achieve. And, you know, it should be noted that that was something that frankly came out of COVID. If we could say something positive came out of COVID, is when our students were given the option to create a portfolio, amazing presentations around that portfolio. Sustainability is another important goal. Next. If you look at the sustainability, again, promoting green initiatives across our schools. So we have documented all the current academic and co-curricular efforts that we have under certain themes like pollinators and water, and there's a theme every month. So we know what exists in the curriculum. That was one of the steps. The other thing is that there are green teams at all of the schools that are implementing different initiatives. And special shout out to the high school green team. I got a letter from the Weston Warm-Up Fund, how they donated the funds. They do all this collecting at the town recycling center, or whatever it's called. Transfer, that's it, transfer station. That's positive. And the other thing is we are very excited about the new course that was passed and is part of the budget for next year, sustainable living. So that's our progress with that. Healthy learning environment, we did do a survey, a developmental relationships survey given in grades 7 through 12 in the fall. And some preliminary results were shared. Next month, there will be a presentation to the full board with a special emphasis also. This was a partnership with ADAP, the Alcohol, Drug, and Awareness Program. And I want to thank the principals, the assistant principals that have been working on this, as well as Dr. Claude, to bring the presentation forward. And then more importantly, so this is the data, what then do we do? And that will, turn, I'm sure, into more action steps. We did also have a parent presentation that was received very well last month by Dr. Kaplan. We have school assemblies on monthly. They do their First Friday School Spirit Days. It's been great moving beyond having in-person classes and to be able, whenever I'm at West or Hvac, I was a secondary person for many years, and when you see Horace the Bee come out and dance around the little kids, you'd think it was the biggest celebrity in the world. Or every morning our Weston Pride News comes on and everything stops. So it's been great to look at all that. And also along those lines, the advisory lessons were tweaked and revised at the middle school. We've had things on mindfulness, especially, and building on their Wingman program to bring school spirit. There is another new course that is going to be offered next year at the high school. It's a state mandate, African American and Latino studies, that also fits in with the whole idea of, inclusivity and a positive climate. Targeted social emotional support, just a couple of highlights. We're continuing with our dialectical behavior therapy training. That's a mouthful. We all know it as DBT, and we've continued to do that work, and the ruler and the DBT implementation. The SRBI process, we are looking at specifically for reading and math, as well as the social emotional piece, and they're in the process of creating a district handbook about that. And one thing that we focused on a lot this year was the voluntary distance learners. And some of them came back, there have been kids that have not been in school in a couple of years, and how to help transition them. Pathways, the Alternative Pathways program, we've spoken quite a bit of that in the last couple of meetings. That's a program very dear to my own heart. And I'm so proud of the high school administrative team for being able to create an in-house program that is thriving and serving our students who have challenges. Excellent program, and we've had to expand the academic component in that. Those are students that we do not want to lose those students to an outplacement, to leaving the district. We want to keep them in the district. Those are our kids. The next one has to do again with special ed and working on that with the reading and math. and their personal goals. And that's all encompassed in the presentation of Dr. Croix. We also have things about the IEP data system. We're going to a new system and we're trying to set ourselves up for success with that. And you heard about that with the additions in the budget that will be paid by federal funds for that. Technology, Mr. DeVito, your favorite. One of the things that I'm really pleased with is that for educational technology, we have increased the number of Tableau data accounts. So what's Tableau? That's the student data system where you can see the results. So I can pull it up and I can see how is Happy Miller doing specifically in math in 4th grade. How is she doing on the different formative assessments? What does she need? What support does she need? All of that is in there. And we have increased all of the licenses so more teachers have them. Mr. DeVito has worked in training these teachers. It's really important when you drill down and look at the data, who is the kid behind that data and how can we best meet that child's needs. And then we have infrastructure, new staff laptops, all that was rolled out. Human resources, we have been increasing, I would say, our postings to a wider variety of audiences, if you will. We are registered to go to UConn on April 7th. There are some other online fairs that we go to. With regards to postings, we have reached out and registered for the Capital Region Educational Council Minority Teacher Recruiting Career Fair. We have increased to post, for example, for the principal of the high school, we reached out to a wider national audience, I will say, to sort of expand our net to hopefully increase the number of qualified candidates. That's for finance. I think we've heard a lot of different things about finance this evening, but I did want to contact 2 different consultants for the enrollment projections because they are so important, and we had 2 different groups do those projections for the budget. We are really trying to look at how to best utilize our staffing because so much of our budget is the staff, almost 78%, and how can we reallocate and make that most effective. And we have had several meetings with the first selectwoman and the town administrator to better understand each other's budgets and offerings, and if there are ways that we can find to mutually support each other. Next slide. Safety and security. You know how many times we've revised that COVID handbook. We continue to meet, monitor the situation, 2 meetings a week. The handbook is updated whenever, quite frankly, something happens. We need new policies. We put in the new mask policy. That's going very well. I'll talk about that a little bit later as far as the new phase of the pandemic at our schools. And hopefully that will continue. As far as facilities and operations, same thing. We have been actively involved in the facilities optimization committee and trying to give them feedback from a variety of groups, including teachers and administrators. One thing that I think is very important as superintendent is really to try to improve the district communication to all stakeholders. So we have communication protocols posted on all of our school websites. Our monthly newsletter has been going out. Hopefully people have found it informative, and the front page of it is a note from the superintendent, which I think is important. I started a podcast, What's Up in the Weston Public Schools. If you want to hear anything about sort of the people behind the staffing that we will continue with. And I'm so happy that our Instagram is now over 1,000 followers. Not quite what the followers are at the high school. I'm still trying to catch that number, but we're working very diligently on that. And we will be sending out something this spring that I have been working on. It's called A State of the Schools. It's a public document. We hope to send it out to all the families in April. all the households in Weston, because it is the entire town that supports the schools. And we're doing that in-house to make sure that it's not a huge cost, I guess I would say. So that's sort of the steps that we've done, the progress we've made. I encourage you to go and look at it. And then we will be doing another one at the end of the year. Some of these goals were designed as 1-year goals that might now take 2 years. Some of them we've made more progress than others, but we will just continue to keep moving forward. And I'd like to turn this over now to Dr. Krog, who wants to give us an update on our reading and math progress. I know that's been very important for people. We have a variety of different metrics that we're looking at. We look at the NWEA. I see that as formative over the 3 times a year. The SBA, which is the sort of the summative. And we also have things like the Fountas and Pinnell, which is specifically geared to reading that he will talk about.
Well, before you start, and just going back to the, when Superintendent Wallach started in the summer, we sat down with her and the entire board over the summer in a number of workshops that really resulted in the district goals. The district goals are a series of both quantitative and qualitative goals, and honestly, to Lisa's credit, on the academic outcomes, she wanted specific quantitative goals, and she wanted to be accountable for those goals. And I think that that's what you see in the, and it's the right thing to do, and that's basically what you're going to see in terms of the academic outcomes. They're all based on specific goals that we all agreed that we would attempt to achieve over the course of the school year.
Thank you, Dr. Pascal. Dan, will you take the clicker, or do you want to hand that to me?
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, so last month, the principals and I had the opportunity to provide an update specifically on our reading and math goals. And what we'd like to do, since data keeps coming in over the course of the whole year, and so at that time, we didn't have our reading data from the Fountas and Pinnell winter assessments. That's hot off the presses now. We talked about it in curriculum committee. I'd like to go through it with kind of a different view for the board tonight as compared to what we did for the committee. And then also, I think what will be really interesting is giving you a window into math classrooms and how the goals are really translating into what's happening in the classrooms, what data are we collecting, what are we seeing at this point, sort of midway through our learning walks in math, and working with a national consultant to improve instruction there. So, as I said, in last month in February, we looked at the MAP achievement and growth data, and here, another benchmark assessment. And this one's for reading. The Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment system we use in grades K through 5. Our teachers assess students in their reading abilities in the fall, winter, spring with this assessment. It is a well-recognized measure in the field for looking at students in terms of their comprehension, their accuracy, their fluency. Those are the 3 areas that we really look at with this Fountas and Pinnell. And it's different from the MAP or the SBA. It's not a multiple choice assessment. It is one in which it has to be administered one-on-one with the teacher and the student. The student has a text that they need to read aloud and answer some scripted questions from the teacher. And based on that, we get accuracy levels, number of errors and things like that with their reading, their fluency, and also the questions tell us whether or not they're comprehending at the appropriate level. And the system, has really 4 levels, meeting and exceeding are where we want to see our students. For some, it may take over the course of the year to meet certain levels, but we certainly are monitoring this performance, and we use, as Lisa said, the Tableau data analytic tool in order to sort of pull all this data together. And what you'll see tonight, the pie charts come directly from our Tableau software and the reading scores that we put in. So let's see if we can move this along. There we go. And as I said, the accuracy, fluency, and comprehension are the focus. I would be remiss, I had one of our CILs wanted to remind me that in the second grade, there is a change with this assessment in that we look for 95% accuracy up till second grade, and then the accuracy rate moves up. We look for the 98% accuracy, so it becomes higher. And also comprehension, we're looking at, can the students identify the purpose of the author and understand why the author is presenting things as they are. So that's one thing. And the levels for Fountas and Pinnell are A through Z. They encompass A beginning in kindergarten all the way through Z, moving into the middle school. By the end of fifth grade, we really want to see them at a B level by the end of fifth grade. And so I thought, as a different look from the curriculum committee, where we looked fall to we looked at fall, we looked at winter. Where are we between these 2 points in the year? Let's take a look back, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and present year with our pie charts, looking at a matched cohort analysis, which is approximately the same students. Let's say we look at our fifth graders who were here pre-pandemic as third graders. And then obviously, it kind of gives us a longitudinal look. So the way our matched cohort analysis is laid out, exceeding benchmark in blue, meeting benchmark in green, approaching benchmark in yellow, red is below benchmark. Obviously, we want to see a lot of blue and green. And so when we look at all the way on the right, the pie chart, our fifth graders, we see 80% of our students exceeding benchmark. That is a great result. And compared to pre-pandemic, that's twice the percentage of students that were exceeding goal at that point. And then if we look at fifth grade, the red and the yellow shrink as compared to when we looked at those students in third grade back in 2019-20. Okay, so that's, I think, really a testament to the curriculum leaders, principals, and the teachers and their hard work. And in fourth grade, again, we see that the red, the below benchmark, approaching benchmark, really shrinking down when we look at, compare that to the pandemic year. And then also, since this is fourth grade here on the right, all the way on the left is when they were in second grade. So I do want to point out that that's that point where that accuracy and comprehension change happens. So you would normally see slightly higher in the yellow historically from our data than we would typically have in other grades. Moving on to third grade, very similar right now in the winter to our pre-pandemic results all the way on the left. I think you look at the exceeding benchmark, an additional 10% of students in that exceeding category, which is very nice to see. And again, if you look in the middle, that's when the students were in second grade. You can see that change I'm referring to there.
Ken, this is just Fountas and Pinnell?
This is just Fountas and Pinnell. And I think, we have a large portfolio of assessments that we look at, and certainly annually SBA, fall, winter, spring, the MAP assessment. This is the assessment that our teachers and our curriculum leaders tell us that when they are planning instruction, planning their groups, is the assessment that is very helpful to them. They take this data, if a student is at, let's say, a level O in third grade at this time, then they know that they're really on track at this point of the year. If they're at a P at the end of third grade, they're really knocking it out of the park and exceeding. So,
can I just stop you for a second? Because I just need clarification based on sort of, the document that's here and the numbers that we're seeing as far as grade level scores, right? like grade 4 scores, fall progress 23, winter progress 27. I mean, 23, 93 and 97, we're seeing growth, right?
Yes.
And does that translate, where am I seeing that? Is that,
So grade 4, winter 21, 22, all the way here on the right.
is the green and blue combined?
Yes.
It's combined.
Yeah, the green and blue combined. And then again, on the 2021. Okay, I see. Because I just wasn't sure what this represented. It's always the green and blue combined.
Correct.
Indicates progress. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Meeting and exceeding. Yep. Okay. So moving on to second grade, and you might look at this pie all the way on the right and say, well, wait a minute, there's more yellow there. There's 13% in the yellow in the winter in second grade. But if we go back a slide and look at our current third graders, when they were in second grade, it was 26% that were in the yellow. That's actually, that's a good improvement there, because now it's only 13% this year. If we look at two different cohorts, we look at last year's cohort. So again, that also tells us we're heading in the right direction, and Andrea Noble specifically wanted me to point that out. And then here again, first grade, compared to last year, we see that fewer students are below benchmark in the red. And so that gives you a look, grades 1 through 5. And I'm going to pause there before going on to math, because I think our principals as well, we're looking at this data, we're trying to see where we are at this point in the year. Can we project out? And we think that this is very positive in terms of student reading abilities, and have trended back towards and even exceeding pre-pandemic levels in some cases. Now, we saw in the map data, we were looking at that last month, and we saw growth, we saw achievement levels, but here, because we have full sets of data from last year and the year before, we're able to look and make those kinds of judgments with this information. So I'll pause there for
Can I have a question? Just what are the, Dr. Fennell, tell a little bit about, what's the important information you get out of this, and what are some of the caveats where you have to look at other things to get a real picture of progress?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Laura, Patty can chime in as well. The key information we see is what is the student reading level, what letter, and parents will hear that in their parent conferences, where the child is, as compared to what is the expected level of performance, what letter should they be at in the winter of third grade, let's say, or it's the spring, where should they be then? So at each point, we know we have that all laid out where they should be. The state recognizes this assessment, and if districts do not have an assessment like this in their portfolio, by next year they need to have those. And we put Fountas and Pinnell in after having the DRA for several years as very strong assessments, and teachers can take that, group students. So if you say, there's certain kids maybe in that yellow approaching, they want to group them together to provide them with support, they can do that.
I'll just add a little bit for our students. This is a highly individualized and personalized assessment. So, we really pride ourselves on meeting students exactly where they are. And this gives the teacher information about each specific child. And it is an actual book they're reading versus, a multiple choice test on a computer. This is a child sitting with their classroom teacher, reading from an actual book. Are they reading accurately? Do they understand what they're reading? And we get very detailed instructional information from that.
So, Laura, Patty, as building administrators, how do you, when you look at these results, tell me what your thoughts are, kind of unpack this a little bit as with respect to your buildings and what this means to you when you look at these kinds of results.
I'll start it, for her, but, we're very proud of the progress our students make in reading. We take them from where they are at the beginning of the year, and we really get them as close to where they need to be as we can by the end of the year. And I will say, I did say to Ken, like, oh, you're sharing winter data, in the spring, it tells a whole nother story too. Sometimes students are, for students who are still approaching benchmark, at this time of the year for our second graders, we want them at a level L. Almost all of those students who are approaching benchmark are at that level L at an instructional level. The reason they're not in the green on that pie chart is because the teachers are working with them at those levels. And maybe in a week or two, they'll be able to do that independently without the teacher support. So, we really do unpack these on a very detailed basis. Our curriculum instructional leader just came off meetings with our kindergarten teachers, looking at each individual student and developing 4 to 6 week instructional plans that are specific and tailored to each individual child. It's not just something we look across, a classroom or a grade level, but it's an individual child, their individual reading progress, what skills they need next, what comprehension work they need next, in a very detailed plan. And we do that consistently and constantly throughout the school year.
And I'm not sure how much more I can add to that, but we're just, so similar. The FNP is so individualized. It's really that constant checking on where students are. And so because we're so differentiated in our reading, that we really need to make sure that we're constantly growing and providing them with the support that they need to get to that next level. This information is really important. We have our data team meetings at least 3-4 times a year, where we are looking at this data and we're looking at every single student, and we're looking at what supports they could use, where they've grown, where they maybe not made as much progress, and why, and where can we provide that support for them. But look at fifth grade, the growth is tremendous. They're back in school, they're talking about books. They're not just reading on their own. They're back in having discussions in small groups and analyzing texts. So just being back and talking about books, I think, has really raised our student comprehension, their fluency, their engagement in reading.
So can you and all of the heads of school, school administrators, can you collectively say we're seeing clear progress between fall and now by cohort?
Absolutely, yes. And I think this information, what we heard from the SILs and the curriculum committee, I think are testament to that.
But, there's a whole other set of test scores that are saying different, and I'd like to actually go through that as well, because I'd like to understand the difference between the two, so that we,
And this is why I asked this, because, and the administrators are very much part of this discussion, because, and I know that you work as a team, so I appreciate you answering for everyone, but, and I want, as Tony said, I'm looking at the numbers on Fountas and Pinnell, and I love that you characterize it as being the quintessential, test that we really should be looking at. So I appreciate that also. I would like to look at the other test results because they do paint a different picture, and just to what degree they're relevant.
Yeah, and I think, let's think about it too, as at the parent level, when they go to their conferences.
Let's talk about, let's not get into math.
Let's
treat math, let's
Sure.
talk about, and let's get into
Exactly.
math and after.
So, you want to see where your child is with their reading score with Fountas and Pinnell, also with the SBA. That gives you a lot of information as well as how they're doing with the classroom teacher. And that's what parents will be hearing. So for us, again, I think just to reiterate, it's two different kinds of assessment. One is strict reading ability, right? The tool of being able to read and comprehend and use that to access content. That's Fountas and Pinnell. It's highly individualized. For the Smarter Balanced assessment, we're looking at multiple choice skills-based, then using that information and applying it in that setting. So, you know, they have different purposes. So smarter balance, the math assessment smarter balance is broader. And those two, we won't have smarter balance obviously till the spring, but we want those three data points and looking at those together. I mean, Dan and I, we start looking at the map data and seeing, you know, are we able to, you know, project out and get a sense of the fall and the winter map information that we shared at last month's meeting. Can we then project, you know, where do we think our students are going to be in the spring? And, you know, given trends we've seen over the years, we don't have a full set of data, much like Founders and Pinnell. We think even with that, we're seeing signs of progress, and that we're going to be heading back towards pre-pandemic levels.
So, so what is the difference then between the two schools? You know, basically, why are we seeing a different picture between the two? Tell me how that informs us on things that we can be doing differently, depending on how you're looking at the different testing modes.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we look at the different testing modes, we pull that information together and decide, well, you know, did this student just have a bad day taking this standardized assessment? Do we need to, question, do we need to provide that student with an intervention? So our data teams will look at both sets of results to determine, is that, you know, does the student need extra support, tier 2, tier 3 intervention? And we provide that. We actually showed the number of students who are in general education who are receiving SRBI. It's based on both of these sets of data.
I guess the question is, how much weight are you putting on the other tests? Because, and I, you know, I think we have to be 100% candid that we do tend as humans to lean towards validating the more successful tests and outcomes than the unsuccessful ones. But as we know, when you're, you know, when there's a plane crash, we can't sort of say, well, you know, there's nothing really to learn from here because the other planes didn't crash. We actually want to say, what did we learn from this and how can we make changes? And the beauty of this district is that the growth mindset is clear. Everyone wants to learn. The school administrators, our superintendent, you, and everyone else, we want to learn from what's not working, and we looked at square in the face during COVID. I just want to look the other tests square in the eye also. And
I think we're doing that all the way down to the level of the classroom where every teacher is looking at their data, looking at their students. Where was their achievement level? Did they hit where we wanted them to be? That 60th percent or higher, 55% or higher, and their growth. They may have achieved high, but did they also grow? I think that's the real value of a map. The assessment is you can see, did they grow? And I've seen kids where they demonstrated a lot of growth. Their achievement level still isn't where we want it to be, but we've been celebrating that. And so I think the different purposes for different assessments. This assessment, I think the map really helps us with trying to help kids, get to that next level because you can see where they are.
Thank you. And the other question is, and maybe this is for Lisa or the administrators, but are all three of the tests or any one of the tests really providing you with information, not just about where the student is needing support, but whether or not the staff are delivering what we need to deliver. So if there are weaknesses in how we deliver our curriculum or how we, some of these skills and abilities of our teachers, bless their hearts, right? Are the tests helping us identify those weaknesses?
Yeah, so I can give you an example from
That'd be
this
great.
year. We had a very large number, an unusual number of first graders who were new to the district. Could have been homeschooled last year, came from other schools, other towns, 21 in first grade. So we do that right from the beginning. We assessed in the fall, got baseline information, and we looked when we recognized, wow, we have a lot of students that maybe did not come with the foundational knowledge and skills coming into first grade that they needed. So we shift and we put our resources around that to work with our first grade staff, to work with our first grade students. And we've seen tremendous growth as a result of that. So, and that's why those data team meetings, which we do in K-5, are so important because we meet frequently as a team throughout the school to look at those trends. Our curriculum instructional leader is setting up those instructional plans right now with teachers, where we still need to see additional growth before the end of the year. So one example I can just give you, so from last year in first grade, when we look from fall to spring, and this is where I think, the spring data is even more powerful. Last year in the fall, which was the year our students came back after the closure, March 2020 happened, everything everywhere shut down. We couldn't do anything. Nobody knew what to do, was this pandemic. When the students came back in the fall and we reopened school, we had 65% of our first graders meeting benchmark at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year in spring, 94% of them met benchmark. And that's because we looked at that information, we planned around it, we put our resources behind it, and students grew. Yeah, and that's what we do throughout the year. So that's just an example of one thing, but that's why this information is so important. It gives us information about individual students that we can act on.
And you have the resources to act on that. And what I mean by that is, does it cost a lot of money to make those shifts?
Well, it's our staff.
I mean, we're already paying our staff, but does it cost money to put more into their ability to shift or pivot or grow in their ability to teach? Does it? And the reason I'm asking this is because, we had a lot of comments during public comment about, divert money from buildings into resources to bring up academic outcomes. And I'm just trying to get a handle on whether whether we all have the resources required to help our staff be better at what they do if need be. Is that something that can happen with, the SILs and counseling, or are we pulling outside expertise in as needed, or do you not need that?
So we do have both. So our curriculum instructional leaders are working with our teams of teachers all the time, both as a team, as an individual teacher, as we see needs with individual teachers in certain areas, they're constantly working with them. In addition, we still have TC that comes and works with our teachers as well. And one of the areas of when we've looked at all this data, we've talked about where some of our needs are, we're now looking at putting in foundations for next year. Where we looked and we saw we've got some weaknesses with some phonics in third grade that we haven't had, and now we're looking at how do we make that stronger for next year. So that's an improvement we're going to be moving for next year.
If I can add, I think that it's a good segue now into the math because, to be perfectly frank, we had to make some adjustments this year on the budget and also planning for next year. And now I'm talking specifically about math, which is a concern. Yeah. But quite frankly, part of the concern is we did not have an instructional coach at Hurlbut in math dedicated specifically to those levels.
So we moved some money over there.
And so we finally have someone. I mean, the other person I think I've shared was working with 50 people, 2 disciplines, running between 2 buildings. How can you develop, appropriately that way? It doesn't work. is just too much. So I think that it's a good segue. And the other, for Dr. Carr's second part of the presentation, was gonna be talking about the learning walk data. And when you talk about, you know, how to really work with teachers so they can see what they need to do in those classrooms, there is no one better, I think, than the gentleman with whom we're working. I worked with him 15 years ago. I worked with him specifically when I became principal of high school. And, you know, people think they're doing something and yeah, no, we're doing that. And then they realize by these walkthroughs, maybe we need to really target and focus on certain things to help. And we had great results, so I'm very optimistic with our work with John Antonetti, and I'm so glad that we were able to reconnect with him.
Before you go to Matt, I have one more. Maybe I'll try it this way. So what are the the interventions that are being put in place to get some of these reading scores back to where they need to be?
So there's several things, Tony. I mean, first and foremost was getting back to, you know, in last spring and into all this year, getting back to small group instruction, getting back to the typical routines where teachers are delivering the curriculum and delivering the full curriculum and having our, you know, full staff to be able to deliver that. I mean, that's just getting back to our program. Secondly, you know, we have brought back our teachers' college support. We, as Patty had mentioned, we have that outside support, along with we have our dedicated skills in reading and have had those working together to support teachers. The intervention, we have a slight increase in the intervention support in reading through the ESSER funding. And that has helped as well because, you know, we did in the curriculum committee share some of the SRBI data, how many students are in month by month getting those supports. And those are several of the key interventions, as well as, you know, when we look at you know, the professional development, just being very targeted with that with the use of data. So the data analytic tool, I know we've talked about before, I think this system has really, because of the pandemic, started to look, and out of necessity, started to look more at data and use that for planning instruction. And that's something, you know, we have to continue to support as we go forward.
One thing I want to add, and perhaps Mr. DeVito can explain it probably the best. When we're talking about these interventions, you know, to have teachers write goals specifically around the students in front of them and how they can improve, and to have those conversations at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and the end of the year, and all our principals have them. But for example, in reading intervention, there's something in Power School, right, Mr. DeVito, that you guys created. We can't really show it because it would be showing the kid.
Yeah.
But when you click on it, all of these interventions are reported now. Every single one of them, what they're doing, are they working? Go ahead.
Exactly what Lisa's saying. So we need to be able to document intervention and information as much as we possibly can. So we have a custom tab built in Power School specifically for reading intervention. We're in the process of creating one for math intervention. Right now, they want to document intervention, reading intervention pursuit. They go to that student's page in Power School, document when the intervention started, what level it is, what's the prescription of the intervention, meaning how many days a week, how many hours a day, and what exactly is the intervention, as well as comments. And that is used during data team meetings to determine, okay, this is the intervention that the student is getting. How are they doing with it? So we want to document that so we see on an individual basis what's working, what is not working. And so that's for reading, and we're in the process of doing that for math intervention also.
And I think where the power is so when you have that kid next year, you have the kid in 4th grade or 5th grade, the teacher can click on that and see, here's the history of the reading intervention. And with the math, this is when he or she started, what went on, and it has different formative assessments, all kinds of information. I mean, I have to say, before I became superintendent, I didn't know it existed because at the high school, we didn't document those kinds of things in reading intervention. Absolutely fascinating, the way that we can better understand the picture of these individual students.
Just wanted to ask a question about the kids who aren't in intervention. So we had a big chunk that were in the blue and the green for winter that were exceeding and meeting benchmarks. But if you look at some of the other test scores, they don't seem to be performing as high of a level. So if you're not qualifying for intervention, but you're underperforming on some of these SBA or NWEA testing, what are we doing for that part of the population?
We're looking at that in the data team meeting. So if the student is below the 50th percentile nationally on math, we're looking at those students, and generally students who are around that 40th percentile are captured into intervention. Or if they're maybe not quite in need of additional intervention support, but they get tier 1 support in the classroom. Like we heard about Andrea coming up with some plans over the weekends for students based on thalamus and no. Well, that's the same kind of thing. We look at that data, determine if the student needs that support. For SBA, if they don't make goal level 3, it's the same scale 1, 2, 3, 4. If they don't make a level 3, we're concerned. And from the start of the year, we would say, okay, we may need to have the student in intervention and put them there. So, each individual assessment gives us that information to determine if more is necessary just within the regular classroom, or if we need to have more intensity and time out, in addition to the classroom. And then certainly there are students who are captured through special education, and we're monitoring through their goals and objectives as well.
We had a lot of chat earlier about setting what our benchmarks were going to be above 65 percentile, and we looked at that conversation about being kind of like the minimum goal that we want all the students to make. So if you have a student who's in the 66th percentile, so they're making our minimum requirement, our minimum goal, they're not necessarily eligible for intervention because they are succeeding. What are we doing with those students to keep them from 66 to get them to the 80th, the 90th, and beyond, that to push the middle of the pack all the way up?
Yeah, I think at the last month's meeting, we saw our results are skewed to the right, as we would expect, as we would want to see, as compared nationally at the 50th percentile. We know that students, if they are performing around the 55th percentile or higher, we know they're really on track for success on the SBA. That is something we have seen when we do some internal analysis. So does that not mean that if you're below that, you're not going to be successful on that? No, you still see students who can be successful. But we're basically looking and monitoring those students. Like I said, around that 50th percentile, we're kind of, we're looking, we're seeing what we need to do. If it's lower than that, and they're getting captured in our intervention. But I think there are a lot of supports in place, and those supports, I think, are based on the data teams and how they, pull that information together as a group and decide what's the best course of action.
Do interventions result in progress always? Like, can you sort of say, like, I have a headache, I could either let it go away, or I could take something? Does the intervention always result in, improved outcomes? Are you confident of that?
Well, so yes and no. Yes, we do see progress with students, and they move out of intervention. There are times where there could be, after a prolonged period, we like to see students after a period of time, be able to move back, but there could be an underlying disability that may be in the way, and we have to go for testing, after we've used some interventions and some various programs and strategies, and say, you know what, there may be something here. And that's where then.
Right, that's exactly what I was getting at, is, you know, interventions, if we feel confident in them, should yield positive results and progress. And if it doesn't, it's either the child is having more difficulty and needs a different kind of support, or the intervention wasn't effective, the right one. That's right. So you obviously have lots of options, you know, to pivot from one intervention to another before saying, well, this child isn't, you know, is going to need some special supports. But in general, you're pretty confident that you have a menu of interventions that, if tried, should result in progress, right?
Yes,
That's
and
reassuring.
But along with that, it's the highly trained reading consultant and reading specialists that go along with that. They're key, because you're gonna have, you know, a great program, intervention, but you need, you know, well-trained people. All of our specialists in reading, they have this higher level of reading expertise. They're reading specialists, reading consultants. But that's not to say we can't improve. I mean, Tracy this morning at our administrative meeting said there's this opportunity from the state where they're going to offer interested districts the opportunity of a reading consultant that can come in and help look at and give us some feedback on our program. So we're looking to get more information on that as well.
I'm ready to go to math if you are, John.
Absolutely.
All right. So as Lisa said, you know, learning walks. We conducted over 300 learning walks in the district in grades K through 12. And what is a learning walk? It's a visit to a math. This was a visit to a math classroom for about 5 minutes. And we generally targeted the middle of the class period, although sometimes in the beginning and end, it happens to just be when we arrive. And the we is curriculum leaders, administrators, and at times when we could, when planning times coincided, we had teachers join them. So we consider learning walks a way of learning about math, learning from each other, and where can we, collect the data and see where can we enhance instruction? How can we enhance our practice? So it's really looking at the practice, what we're doing. And we've engaged with the learning walk guru, John Antonetti. I mean, figuratively and literally. I mean, he is the guru. He's conducted over 23,000 learning walks of his own. He's written the book. And, you know, so he came in just as we were starting this process. We asked him, help us with our protocol for going in, look fors, here's what we think that we want to look for, give us some feedback. We did that initially, met with our teachers, so it's kind of a collaborative study, let's say, what's going on in the classroom. And we did this K-5 and 6-12. And as I said, we first, you know, as we went into the classroom, we primarily in the middle of the period, as you can see here. And at the elementary level, one thing we notice, and we're very pleased with the fact that, you know, students are acting as the workers. Student is worker, teacher is coach in this scenario. And that's what we would expect. That's what we would want to see. But obviously there does need to be some direct instruction, and we do see that the teachers are doing that as well. And, you know, in the student-centered domain that we were looking at 4 particular things. Are they students involved in meaningful discourse, discussion about the math concept in learning and sharing with each other, so kind of learning with others? Are they engaged in a productive struggle? Are they really being challenged cognitively, working through problems, persevering? We're looking for that. And are multiple strategies encouraged in that classroom, so multiple ways of answering problems. And, you know, we're looking at the extent, how much are students practicing a procedure? Because we don't just want them practicing procedures. Okay, here's the procedure, mimic the teacher, and move on. So what we found is Students in elementary classrooms are engaging in productive struggle as the longest bar here we see most frequently, but equally, and seeing them engaged in discourse and using multiple strategies is great. So John Antonetti said to us that across the country, he's been all over the country, and he said since the pandemic, this is the most promising results he's seen in terms of learning loss, in terms of how Weston has recovered, is engaging in these kinds of practices. So we celebrated that. And then, with our program, and we use an approach, concrete pictorial abstract. And students, at the elementary level really begin with manipulatives and seeing things visually, and then we ultimately want to get them to working with numbers abstractly. And so, working abstractly is not a bad thing. But we were encouraged to see that there is a great deal of learning with using concrete objects and representing them visually. So it kind of confirms, our intent as a program is to do that. We're seeing that happening.
Can you go back to that one? Do you mind? I asked it. I mean, the goal is for kids to move from the concrete to the abstract. I mean, that is the goal. But at this stage, what grades are we talking about here?
This is K-5.
So K-5, by 4, they should be thinking abstractly? I guess my question is, this is, the bottom bar is excellent in the younger grades, and then you want to see that grow up to the top bar in the next grades, right?
When we say abstractly, we're really referring to representing the math abstractly.
Right, no, that's what I mean, like, Montessori manipulatives.
Yeah, more as
you want to move into two-dimensional abstract concepts only learned through early manipulatives. So I'm just wondering whether that is, this doesn't help me very much, because I'm thinking, well, if you're in first and second grade, the bottom bar is an excellent result. If you're in the top bar, if you're in higher grades, you want that abstract bar to be longer. But that's why I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think as we cycle through all the different concepts in math, whether it's in fractions, we're talking about decimals, or we're talking about problem solving, you want the kids to be, we use fraction circles, we use counters, you're using place sets. So they're always, that's how they build that deep conceptual understanding, not just the memorization of an algorithm.
Right.
Certainly we taught them bar modeling, so problem solving, that goes all the way on up. So that's what we're talking about, that pictorial is on, they're not just drawing like little pictures, but they're drawing a bar model, or they're drawing,
okay.
So that's the difference.
Thank you.
They're also not mutually exclusive.
Right.
You want students to be able to create visual representations at a very high level. So, well, a kindergartner may be able to write the number 10. Do they know that 10 can be 5 and 5, 8 and 2, 7 and 3? Can they draw that? Can they represent it? Can they break it up, manipulate it, move it around, so that when they get to those higher level math skills and understanding, they're able to do that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another area that we looked at was meaningful grouping for instruction. So in the planning of a lesson, purposely deciding how we're going to work with students in small groups or in partnerships. And so this kind of gives you the range of what we saw. Almost 40% of the time, we saw whole group instruction with the whole class and the teacher. And then the targeted small group was about a third of the time, where the teacher, has a group of students reteaching skills and so forth. This is all going to be more than 100%, because, obviously when you have a small group, if other kids are doing something else, either working independently or working in partnerships. And I think that, what John said to our teachers was that this is looking good. One thing you might you want to enhance this even more with potentially more learning with others. Maybe that working independently, that bar shrinking a little bit. So there were some minor tweaks here to see more learning with others, but very specifically looking for having kids looking at the way they've approached problems and finding similarities and differences. And that's a really powerful strategy in education. When you can find patterns between your work or another student's work or your own work, without getting research-based, it's the effect sizes are higher, right? When you're looking at similarities, differences, and patterns. So that's one of the commitments from our teachers, the elementary, and even at the high school level, to do that through either individually or learning with others.
Just before you get there, so you had someone come in to do this work. What was the problem that was posed to this person that did this work? What was it that we were supposed to be getting out of this piece of work?
Yeah, that, as a district, this is a goal of ours to improve math performance and learning, and that we want to study it, gain some information as to what the practice is looking like, and then have him provide professional development, which we had on March 3rd and 4th, on how we can build off of it and improve.
So what was the conclusion after, I'm sure he looked at all the test scores, I'm sure he did all of this, so K to 5, what was the conclusion that was drawn?
K to 5, much to celebrate, and the advice to us was to +1. He uses the term +1. So in 3 areas: learning with others, getting the similarities and differences I talked about, and with these multiple representations, the visual representations, continuous, there's small tweaks in those 3 areas, and he modeled for teachers in the professional development how to do that. And it's very powerful. He was well received, and so now what he's left us with is, okay, go back into the classroom, implement these tweaks, and then with our next round of learning walks, we see, okay, is there movement? Are there changes?
So were there any specifics here in some of these charts that said, oh, here is why we're having a problem in that? Like I'm trying to kind of get to the heart of it.
Yeah, I think maybe in the next section that will also help, because I think K5 and 612 are, different things. They're, same 3 areas they're working on, but it's interesting because we did predictions at the 612 level. We had math teachers predict what their results would be ahead of time.
This is interesting to me, because this is actually not nothing. Like, this is the kind of professional development intervention that we want to see, is that we want to come in and say, you're not doing enough small group instruction, and these kids who are clearly struggling with the numbers, they can see, need small group instruction because they're going to be problem solving, and applying their learnings.
That's what I was trying to get to, is sort of what.
Yeah, I think it sounds really valuable, because we can't ignore the numbers. The numbers are atrocious, but he's saying, when I'm watching what happens in the classroom, I can see that if you make these adjustments, you're going to see progress. At least he sounds like he was reassuring you that way.
Yes. Yeah. And so, similar process, coming in the middle of the lesson, 60% of the time, student-centered versus teacher-directed. We asked the teachers ahead of time, their prediction, and they thought that they would be student-centered more of the time, and actually it was the reverse. It was more teacher-directed. Now, we unpacked that. Janine Russo, during the curriculum committee meeting, talked about how, teachers commented coming out of the pandemic, trying to catch kids up. There may have been more, teacher-directed as a result. We talked about, okay, going forward, we want to look at that and see if we can increase that. Because we know that, student as worker, teacher as coach, that can be highly effective. And Similarly, the same thing in terms of the predictions, and we saw that multiple representations were used 45% of the time. Wanted to see more graphical representations, more tables, more of that visual within, obviously, the work that they're doing as they're learning the material. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of abstract, but we wanted to see more of that multiple representation, and the teachers did too. Individual versus collaborative student work. I mean, I think it's the same story for all three of these pie charts. And working in pairs, learning with others. John really prompting us to say, okay, we have those partnerships and have kids looking for those patterns and similarities and differences together. And we had some teachers already starting to think about how they would tweak yesterday's lesson, if they were to do it again, and what they're going to do for their next lesson to incorporate that. So on this last slide for 612, the kinds of strategies used, practicing a procedure in red, probably more so than they wanted to see. Discovery, exploration, while it should be a little higher, I mean, you can't do inquiry all the time. So that is going to be a lower bar, but we would want to see that a little more. And again, I think with meaningful discourse, productive struggle, just shining a light on that we need to do more of that is important. So, overall, I think, two different stories, and but I think equally powerful in terms of next steps. And so next steps, the middle school, as a result, is doing a book study as part of this. And it's building thinking classrooms in math, and they're pulling some really good strategies related to what John talked about and our commitments. And commitment is that each of the department meetings, the monthly department meetings, teachers are coming, and they're holding themselves accountable by coming with how have they made changes in practice. And so that's a big piece.
We're also continuing the learning walks, correct? The plan is to do a few hundred more, so people can, there's specific things in these learning walks we're looking for that we value and we need to see. And if we see more of them, they're directly aligned with better instruction for learning.
So, I mean, you kind of think of it as a professional learning community because the teachers are really, they're a big part of it and they're engaged in this process. It's not top down, hey, just, you need to do this. We're starting to get buy-in into that.
Which grades do you think, where there's probably a higher focus on intervention right now? In math.
The
Intervention.
need for more intervention.
What's that?
The greatest need for intervention.
The need, yeah.
Concerning, maybe.
When you say
the most concerning. The most concerning.
That's where I thought you were going with it. Okay. I think, before the pandemic, 6th grade scores in math, we saw a trend, and we had plans for the pandemic year to implement as a result of a trend. That's an area we need to address in 6th grade. I think in the 8th grade math, the 8th grade standard level, the 8th grade level math is an area. And as a result, we're also looking at comparable groups of students in 9th grade who are coming through the pandemic. So I think those are 3 key areas of the secondary level.
Can I expand a little bit on that? And I think that's what my big aha moment was. I think for a lot of us this summer is when you look at a whole grade and you don't disaggregate it by the levels they're in, it might seem okay. I have concerns, as does Dr. Craw, about the standard level, and as does Mr. Doe. Standard level in 7th and 8th grade math. Something's going on there. And when you talk about, you know, to have numbers like that, it has to be something as far as leveraging strategies, resources, professional development, and figuring it out. Because, you know, those are the students that I'm worried about when they go to the high school. And that's why we look specifically at the algebra and the accelerated algebra. And it is comparing apples, sort of apples and oranges. You give them the NWEA, then you're looking at the midterm. We gotta monitor them. We gotta see what's going on. How can we help these students? And I think that we're making progress.
Yeah.
It's gonna take time and dedication and focus and the relentless expectation that we make progress. We can't leave these kids behind. I mean, I'll be blunt, that was the level that my daughter was in when she went through Weston High. We've got to really focus on it. And see, and it doesn't just start in that grade, it's continuing, you know, we have to look at it. That's hard.
Kind of a question. So a lot of data looks at the student progress, but it seems to go back to the way in which the educators are educating the kids. So is there going to be at some point looking back at the changes that were made from the delivery of the education, and these things work, and then that sort of becomes part of when new teachers come on board? This is what we find works in Weston. But what it seems like is what we've done in the past with some of these educators may have done elsewhere, or what they've learned to become a teacher might not be what's best for Weston. So just wanted to confirm that there will be some sort of look back at some point, maybe the end of this school year, early next school year, where the changes, it seems like the changes are being made in the delivery of the instruction.
Yeah, and I think there's system changes that are happening. You're seeing us, you know, growing in the same direction with some key strategies, and that we'll be looking back at how that worked. I think there's some changes in terms of structure at the middle school where we're having longer class periods, the dedicated teaming model. Those systemic issues are key. I think, you know, we look at our you know, curriculum as it stands as well. You know, we're using the right resources. All that is a look back, you know, as you know, once we have the, you know, full set of data.
Right.
And then, yeah, any new people that come in, you give them that orientation. That's where our SILs and administrators come in to provide them that support.
I also think it's important to know that it's not just about new people, but people that are here. I mean, everyone's working really hard. Nobody goes in thinking, great, these kids aren't going to do well. You know, we're really trying. Right. And I think that one of the big aha moments isn't this correct, Dr. Cora, that the book that they're now doing was from one of the math teachers, right? Mr. Doak? What they're doing? That the book stuff.
Actually, that book, Thinking Classrooms, Developing, is 612. Janine's doing that with all of them, but they've been talking about it. I think maybe you picked up on the fact that one of the math teachers was listening to it as an audio book and spread that to the other teachers. So there's been a lot that they've been doing, even some of the physical setup of the classroom based on that book. They're, as I think as Dr. Cross said, they're starting to grow more in the same direction, and it's really positive.
I think it would be helpful when you see the scores improving, to put something behind what changes were made, so that the parents, and the teachers for that matter too, can say, hey, these are the changes we made, and these are why the scores improved. Because improved scores are great, but if we don't know how we got there, then we can't be grateful for how we got there, and we also can't look out for speed bump ahead because we're going back to our
course correct.
Right.
I think that's why the next round of walkthroughs are really going to be telling. You know, keep focusing on these. We know these high leverage strategies. Keep looking at it, and we have to report at the end of the year. Yeah.
When's the Lisa? When's the next time we can actually? When's the next review? It's got to be end of year, right?
Yes. Hopefully May.
Think by May.
We won't have the SBA and the NWA scores or the F&P, so maybe it's just a little more time for that.
June?
June, I mean, as soon as, yeah, we were usually by the end of June.
I was gonna say, I think we should have a report on it before the end of
The year.
the
Well, we should
year.
have our annual instructional update in May, but we will not have new benchmark assessment data at that time.
Even if school is out, I think we should have a
Of course,
meeting.
yeah, I think so
Yeah, we
too. I
have
mean, I think
to-
it's gonna be really informative to have. And the state does typically turn around the SBA in a normal year fairly quickly. We'll have our math data as soon as we finish the testing the next day.
Yeah, the state's gotten faster and faster as the years progress in terms of smarter balance data, so hopefully we'll get it in a decent time schedule this year so we can get the data over and
And our assessment window for math ends about when? By the first week of June.
Yeah, I think it's May 27th or the first week of June.
So I think in June, that would be a good time.
We're just gonna keep compiling as much data as we can along the way. I think that's
So
important.
what you have in your board packet will be a complete review and look at that information.
Listen, I just wanna say, I never for a second did it go through my mind that the teachers aren't working harder than they've ever worked, and the school administrators working harder than they've ever worked, so. No, I just wanted to say it publicly, that I know that you're not dialing it in, because it's the nights like this that you're like, oops, I dialed it in. Like, I know that it did not happen. You're working as hard as you possibly can, so I completely respect and understand that. The concern is you're working harder than you've ever worked, and we're holding our heads going, shit, why, oh, sorry for all you people at home, but why are the numbers going down? Like what's going on? And what we want to hear is that you know why the numbers are going down, right? That you know what the answer is and you know exactly what the intervention is. Now, throw in COVID and the mental health of all of these kids who are really struggling, right, Tracy? Like, let's not, we're not going to blame everything on COVID. We're not. I heard what everyone said in public comment. But you know what? Let's not say that these kids are not going through some really big mental health struggles this year. So all of that makes it a bigger mystery, right? What is it that they need? It's not as easy to pinpoint what it is they need or what do the staff need. So I get how complex it is. Still totally concerning to see the numbers.
One thing I don't want to, I keep thinking of something that Laura and Patty said, and some of the teachers have heard, but the other thing we have to keep in mind is when you look at these NWEA, oh wow, dipped a little in winter. It could very well be because we haven't covered, right, those topics yet that the kids are being tested on. So there's a little bit of that going on, yes.
Why are they tested on them?
Because, can you elaborate, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so the NWA is designed the way it's designed, but each school district in each state has its own scope and sequence for topics. So some states might have a spiral curriculum where they teach all the topics all year long. And we go into depth to mastery, but unit by unit, which a lot of places do.
That's enlightening.
So it depends, we might do geometry, the heavy geometry units in the spring. There might be a district that did them in the fall, so their geometry scores are better than ours.
Okay.
And this is NWA is used nationally, so it depends on what state you're in. That's local control of schools, so it's not a national curriculum.
And we don't have control over what they assess, we just say that it's the winter assessment, that's what the NWEA gives us. So it's not like we can say remove this or that from this assessment. So that's why there's some discrepancies.
Yeah. I would just say in future meetings, when we discuss these learning outcomes and progress, that it would be really great to have one slide, Ken, that says, here are the 5 to 10 reasons we think these kids are not progressing at the level and rate we want. That we pinpoint what the causes are. Because if we can name them, we can address them. And you may have done that, but it would be really helpful for us to see and the public to see.
I think we're still working on it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a rolling process, isn't it? just as I was saying, is maybe we build on that and say, these are the, we put up 3 next time. These are the 3 things we've absolutely identified are causes for this. The next one there's 5, the next one, it may be helpful.
That might be a good rolling topic in curriculum.
I just had a quick question about Tableau with Rigon, and we talked about how powerful it was and it was informing the teachers and the data teams. Is there any thought to how the information from Tableau might change or inform what we send to parents in terms of report cards or information? And I'm not necessarily saying direct Tableau access, but will we change the types of reporting now that we have this better data, more individualized data?
Dan, do you want to start with that?
I mean, I can dream and I could wish that we could get everybody parents access to Tableau, but it's a step-by-step process of getting the information in properly into PowerSchool, vetting the information, making sure that everything's going in good, right? Because we all know with data, garbage in, garbage out. Then after that, it's getting everybody comfortable with the data and the data analytics and understanding what they're seeing. Then we move into more of a personalized approach with a lot of the data dashboards. So one of the data visualizations we have is called the student dashboard. You pull up one student specifically, and it brings up everything about that student on one screen. Their attendance history, their report cards, standards or grade-based report cards, all the assessments they've taken, any SRBI that they've had, any behavior. It's a step though. It's a step-by-step process before we can get to that position. And it's a licensing issue also within Tableau, because Tableau, every time you access it in a different way, you may have to pay for more licenses. So I think it's a step-by-step process. So I would like to say, yes, I would love to be able to do that tomorrow, but I don't think we're there just yet.
Yeah, we're not at scale yet with it.
I think the information parents need right now, K-5, they're going to get that through their map report that was sent home, the parent conference, the Dr. Simpanel for the reading as well, that what level they're at. That's, and how they're doing classroom assessments, unit assessments. That is going to be the key pieces of information. Pulling that all together into one place, that you've set the challenge.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll do another review then in the June meeting.
Yeah, I forward to it.
Great. Lisa? High school search.
Oh. Okay, the high school search. So we sent out a survey to the parents, students, and staff, and we have some of the highlighted results. We had 394 parents respond, 100 staff, and 390 students. And fun fact, the students that the highest grade was the seniors. Now, some people might think, why the seniors? And I made the deal when we sent it out, like, we need your input. You've been there for 4 years, So we have all of that, and that will help inform our questions. And as we move forward, things that they thought were important is, the overall group is obviously excellent interpersonal skills, but the idea of being visible in the school, going to events, working with all the stakeholders, being true to the mission, innovation and creativity, a lot of those were highlights. We got all of the survey results that were very interesting. We currently, I think there's 14 applicants. We also just posted 2 other national places that took a little bit longer because, believe it or not, we had to do snail mail checks to them. One of them was a diversity website at the national level, and the other one was NESDEC. They don't just do enrollment studies, they also post. We've extended the timeline for when you can apply to right before April break because of that delay. So we're moving forward, and we still hope to be on track to have a new principal announced by the end of the school year.
Great. Lisa, what?
Oh, COVID update?
Yeah, maybe you can give a little bit of a COVID update now that we're kind of mask choice, just kind of what
Sure.
we're seeing, what we're doing.
Sure, I think that I would turn to the principals to just say a quick thing from each building, because some of the rules have been tweaked, correct? Which, I think, paints a picture of what the school day looks like for our youngsters, elementary schools.
Yeah, so at the K-5 level, obviously we're all mask optional now. We also have now students who are able to ride home on a bus with a friend. So that restriction has been lifted. We're also combining classes for recesses. So that's another next step.
No, I think we're the same. We send a note that riding buses, I would say maybe a third of our students are wearing masks and 2/3 not. Recesses are together now more for the playground. But we are looking at having a chorus concert and a orchestra concert, and looking at having parents coming in for our parent-teacher conferences, so it's a little normal.
The only thing I would add from the middle school is that as of today, the grade level eats together in the cafeteria for the first time in 2 years. So we're no longer using this space as a satellite cafeteria. And I'd like to thank the maintenance crew over the weekend. The carpets were shampooed.
Shout out.
The story is very similar at the high school. I was also going to add, we're back to a normal footprint for our lunch waves, so students are all eating together in the cafeteria once again, which is fun to see. It looks very normal in the building, which is quite refreshing, as we all noted at the beginning of this meeting. We have a plan for a 9th and 10th grade assembly next week on our school day SAT day, which is exciting. That's the first time that will have happened in 2 years, and looking forward to many exciting spring events, celebratory spring events. So all good news.
Thank you. We still meet twice a week. The COVID liaisons meet, and then we also meet with the Director of Public Health and our medical advisor to continue to monitor the situation. With regards to our pool testing, that's still going on. That students that, parents that wish their child tested weekly, now it's opened up to the staff as well. That'll start next week. Any staff member that wishes to participate in weekly testing can. We did have a little bit of a blip in 4th grade, and there was a spike in the dashboard because of in 4th grade. And there was some question as to what happened was within a pretty short period of time in the morning last week, I believe it was, we had gotten 3 positive cases, 4 or 5, went to 6. And we immediately got on the phone with Dr. Marks, contacted Mark Cooper, and the decision was made because of how it kind of seemed to go a little bit picking up the pace just within a couple of hours, to send the children home with test kits and to have the whole class go remote for 3 days. At their recommendation, Dr. Marks is especially, and I do think that helped to kind of contain the situation. There was a concern that, and some people said, well, what is the specific metric you used? Basically, we talked to the nursing supervisor, the nurse, the administration. We were all on the phone within an hour and got them on the phone and looked at the number. And when we got to number 5 and 6, at first it was, well, maybe, no, we better just send them home for the 3 days. And I'm happy to report that I think that there's only 3 positive cases right now at the dashboard, 1 at the middle school, 1 at Probet, 1 at Wes, students, and none of them are associated with, they're not associated with each other. So that will be our protocol moving forward. We don't want to overreact, certainly, but it's great to know that we can get our medical advisor right on the phone and she'll talk us through different things. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we keep those weekly meetings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's better to meet weekly for the remainder of the year, even if we have, okay, we're good, because I just feel much more comfortable, that continual check-in, and I know that you do, Dr. Pesco, now that you've joined the meetings too.
Okay. I think that's it for the regular agenda. Anything from the committee chairs? A couple of things we have on the 24th, we have a remote meeting, a special meeting of the board. Tecton and the FOC is going to review the campus configuration options with the Board of Ed. The meeting, follow-up meeting with the Board of Finance tomorrow night was canceled. They got everything they need in our first meeting, so we probably won't be meeting with them again probably until the end of the month. It's kind of it for updates. So if there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.